Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. worldafropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for worldafropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit worldafropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. worldafropedia.com.
I know you like the way I'm freaking it. I talk with slang and I'ma never stop speaking it.
Criminal slang.
That's just the way that I talk, yo.
Vocabulary spills, I'm ill. Speak with criminal slang.
That's just the way that I talk, yo.
Vocabulary spills, I'm ill.
Yo.
Who do you know who talks like this?
Like, you with me? You upside this? You in? And suddenly you got, like, instant virality right off the bat, which is way cool. And we're like, guys, that's a total slam dunk. But that's just the start of it, okay? That's just like small bananas. And future forward, what you do is you free yourself of visual clutter.
If you work in an office, you'll recognise office jargon, being asked to touch base, being told it's a no-brainer, or asked to do some dreaded blue sky thinking. According to a new survey here in the UK, they are some of the most annoying phrases used at work. Mark DeToro is from Glassdoor, the jobs website behind the poll. He told me why people use office jargon.
People think it makes them sound more intelligent, which is a bit worrying. Secondly is probably the fact that it's human nature to copy and try and adapt to their surroundings. So if they see senior people they respect, using office jargon and buzzwords, we're going to naturally copy them.
Does it really make you look more intelligent, though? I mean, a lot of people I know would say the exact opposite.
Unfortunately, a lot of people feel when they hear things and speak to people and they say things that they understand that sound good, people like to copy it. To say words like this, such as "let's pick it up and run with it," "this is a game changer," or even "punch a puppy," they think it will make them stand out.
What impact does it have on listeners when they hear phrases like that, when they hear "we're on a journey" or "touch base"?
This kind of stuff can slow down productivity. It can actually, in some cases, make certain employees lose respect for other people. And why use 2, 3 and maybe 4 words when one will be absolutely fine?
What should people be saying instead?
Well, it's about being simpler, cleaner, straighter down the line, and just a bit more transparent. Instead of something like blue sky thinking, it's like, why don't we just say, let's be a bit broader on this. Let's think, let's go a bit beyond. Exactly, imaginative. It's that kind of thing. There isn't any right or wrong answer. It's just about moving away from these phrases that have been coined over the years.
What's your least favourite of these phrases of all?
My least favourite is probably "we're on a journey." The reason for this is, "we're on a journey" is a trip from Gatwick to Marbella for a hen do. That's a journey. But "we're on a journey" in business speak is almost just saying, okay, this campaign, this piece of work we can do is going to take 3 or 4 months. That's not a journey. That's just inefficient working.
Mark DeToro from the Glassdoor website.
Can I be heard?
Heard both.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Right on.
Thank you so much. Let me really quick, y'all. Number one, to the female caller that said that about, or the one that wrote in about the BBC clip, I thought the exact same thing, that us not having babies is supposed to solve the problem. But, all right, I know it's not workplace racism. This is Emmy. But I didn't get to call in on Thursday to tell y'all what's been going on. So I told y'all about this individual, and I have to because I just walked in a plantation, and my heart rate is really high, my blood pressure is going up, and I'm getting stressed. So last week, there's an individual here. He's not a suspect. He's a racist. I know it. his behavior, his mannerisms, all his nonverbals, even his verbals. He threatened to kill people, all this craziness. I'm the one over here in the DMV area where I work at is on the VA side. This is an open carry state or whatever. I've seen him. I told y'all this stuff is getting serious over here last week. So I have a code with him. From the minute I saw him and felt him, I knew two things. Number one, well, I'm only saying two things to you. Number one, do you need something? And number two, how can I help you? I'm not like doing no frivolous talking. I'm not greeting. I'm not doing none of that. What you need, get out of my face immediately. So that's been the code. I haven't done nothing. He gets upset every time. I never speak to him. He thinks it's something like I'm really, really supposed to do whatever. I sit at the front desk. I'm not into inviting you to the desk. I don't want none of that. He has a dog. I've seen this dog go off when it sees black people, whatever. My code is not to talk a lot. Everyone knows that I don't talk. I'm serious. Get in the building, get upstairs, go to your apartment, leave me alone. I was going to go do something on one of the floors. So last weekend, I was around the side of the desk. Like I told you about this dog. So he comes out, the dog rushes out of the elevator. I'm not a fan of big dogs, especially, no, lie. I'm not a fan of white people's dogs because I don't trust them at all. So anyway, the dog rushes to me. I freeze in my steps, like I stop so this dog can like sniff me or whatever and chill and back up off me. He come all strutting out or whatever, like, yeah, my dog, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. He passed me thinking I was about to sit there and greet him just because I was on the other side of the desk. I didn't. I went and did. So his whole nonverbal was like, this ain't going to speak to me. No, I'm not. I went and did what I had to do. When I came back, the television was off. The only way to turn the television off is to come behind the desk, get the remote from inside of the desk, which was inside of a drawer, or reach over. Either way, that's an area you're not supposed to be in. So he already went ahead and violated that space. I read that as an attack. It's a subtle attack, but it is an attack because it's pretty much saying you don't have space, and I'm going to come into your space whenever I feel like it. Ain't nothing you could do about it. But he wasn't there, so I ain't say nothing. I wasn't there, so it's not like I thought. I just knew ain't nobody going to the lobby in the little bit of time that I had went upstairs really, really quick, right? So I was like, okay, cool. Yesterday, I came in, and I made a note. That's, as a matter of fact, my codification for that, I made a note. I put it in highlighter. Look, I don't care what anybody says to me. I'm not dealing with this individual. I don't get paid for that. Like, that is it. So if you're going to fire me, there's a record that I told you because of his previous behavior, his conduct, and the things that he has said, I am not messing with him. Boom, bam, in the notes, moving on. This weekend, his routine, he messed it up or whatever, so he was actually down here a lot earlier. This is a building that allows for people to have dogs, so there's more dogs in here than there are human beings. So there's doggy treats at the front. It's a glass container. He likes to take the top of the glass container and drop it. I don't watch TV in the front lobby or whatever, so it's really, really quiet in the front lobby. So all of that always makes me jump. Like I'm having this like automatic response of like I'm jumping. So I was like, you know what? I just took the glass thing, took the top, moved it, whatever. We're not playing this no more. So I come in today, relieving the girl that gets off. I worked the overnight. She's like, look, something serious is going on. All of a sudden, I immediately knew it was him. I'm looking at the notes. It's him. He is walking around with his gun holster, his gun exposed. He's threatening, and he's saying people are slashing his tires. Number one, I think he slashed his own tires. Number two, I'm about ready to call the police. Anyway, number three, I would quit this job today and take my behind home immediately. I'm not about to die for anything. But they're saying, oh, well, he seems to be calm or whatever. I'm telling y'all because I really don't know, I don't know how to feel right now. And that they're going to try to evict him starting on Monday. They got the attorneys or whatever to get him gone. Y'all, I got to be here till 7 o'clock in the morning. This is a man that's irate. He's already, you know what I'm saying? Everything I just told you, I don't want to repeat it again because we don't have a whole bunch of time. But it's on the record. Emmy is letting y'all know it's going down over here in this building in Arlington. So, and I don't have my blazer with the pockets today. I just, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I done stuffed the mace and the voice recorder in my top so that I can, if I'm not like at the desk or nothing, I can just whip it out and go ahead and start recording. Mace is behind and call the police. But that's what it is tonight. So I'm on super high alert and I do not need this. Thank y'all for listening.
Yes, sir. Thomas in New York.
Oh, man. I feel for that lady, yo. As she says, going down in the DM. I don't know what to say to do because my codification might be, I got to go. I got to leave. I got a family emergency. I'm not going to be here for that one. That's can turn potentially dangerous. If you're able to, and you have someone willing to, stay on the phone with you tonight, maybe a family member or something, someone you could text during the night just to keep someone else in contact with you. So if something was to go there, you could have someone in your family or one of your friends already aware of this, and they could make some calls if you're not able to leave your job because, you know, this could be potentially dangerous. And I'll mute my line. Thank you. I feel for you.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, July 27th, 2017, 2017. So I have been told. I don't know why I was thinking 2014. Wacky. This is our weekly broadcast, Workplace Racism. If you are a black entrepreneur, and or if you just are a black person, you have a job, maybe you even work for a race soldier, but if you have figured out what to do so that you're not being harassed, you're not having to deal with problems like what Emmy is dealing with, either from your coworkers or patrons, people who come in and are using your establishment, your business, whatever it is. You have figured out, hey, I get my paychecks, I get my raises, I get my promotions, I have a great office, I'm not harassed, and I think it's going to be like this until I get ready to retire. Well, then you should be the first person to dial in with a hand up and give us suggestions, strategies, tips, how you did this, and what we can do so that we can replicate your success on the job. And you should still be observing, because if you have figured out what to do so that you're not being harassed, I'm pretty sure that some of the other people that you work with who are not white, I'm sure they have not figured out all of your secrets. So they're probably being mistreated. You should still be observing things that are happening around you. But we definitely need people who have figured out some counter-racist tips. Number one, certainly you're always welcome to dial in. If you have problems, difficulties, you just want to get feedback, suggestions, the number to dial, 641-715-3640. The code 564943#. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. We'll give out the number again as we proceed. And certainly you can always email untiljustice@gmail.com if you are not able to speak and you want to write in your commentary. If you have observations or you have your own situation that you want to discuss, untiljustice@gmail.com. We can keep it anonymous. Some people wrote in already, so I'll read those commentaries as we proceed through the broadcast. But feel free to write in if you want to share your commentary. Remind listeners again, this is not a spectator broadcast. This is not something people should use to say, oh yes, it's Thursday, I can listen in and see what difficulties the niggers are having on the job this week. That'll be fun. White people are really making them mad, plucking their nerves on that. That's not what this is designed for. If you are a non-white person anywhere in the world, if the system of white supremacy exists, I don't think you're going to be able to escape that abuse on the job, whether that's your current situation, whether that's reflecting on your work history. You should be able to have commentary, thoughts, observations, things to share on workplace racism. I know Dr. Welsing, that was one thing that she said a lot, that too frequently we are not serious in addressing racism, that it should be impossible, totally impossible to have 5 black people together and not have a robust conversation about workplace racism and things that are happening to us. So let us not be spectators, actively participate. There was a clip at the beginning of the program, one segment from the BBC, where they were talking about workplace jargon. I'm sure some folks can relate to a lot of the different lingo and what have you that's being used on the job. I know sometimes that is used to cause confusion. I've worked in work environments where they used a lot of acronyms and abbreviations. That was a part of the vernacular for that specific job. And just like I said, a lot of times that would produce a lot of confusion, particularly if you're a new hire and what have you, and they're just throwing acronyms at you left and right, and they don't explain what these things stand for, what they mean. That can just be another way for white people to be deceptive in terms of how they communicate information. The second sound clip, that was from the compensatory call-in this past weekend. We used to do workplace racism on the compensatory call-in. That would be like the last 40 minutes or so of the compensatory call-in. And this past weekend, Emmy, she called in, DMV, DC area, Virginia area. She called in and she was talking about her workplace situation. You heard it explained on the line, and I wanted to revisit that because I was kind of close to the end of the compensatory call-in this past weekend. So I wanted to kind of bring that into our normal Thursday workplace racism forum to see what people thought. And I think it touches on some other issues. I think when we talk about workplace racism, I think safety, number one, I had not thought about this when I entered what they call the workforce in terms of what is the criteria. What are situations where I need to remove myself from this job? Like things have gotten to a point where it's unsafe, where something violent could happen, where regardless of, if this means that I'm going to be fired or whatever it is, I need to extricate myself, even if it's just from today, that I cannot, whatever shift or whatever hours I was supposed to work today, I cannot do them because this environment has become unsafe. I feel if I stay here, there is a likelihood, an increased likelihood because of circumstances that something violent could happen to me, that I could be harmed in some way. I think that is very important to consider anytime really under the system of racism, white supremacy. But I would say particularly now, because just my general sense from looking and the different types of incidents that have been reported over the last, we'll say, year or so, where it's just white racists, they are committing acts of violence that are totally unprovoked against black people that they don't know, black people that have not done anything to them, they have not exchanged words or anything, where it's just violence just all of a sudden out of nowhere. And I think when you're having more incidents like that, I think we just need to take it seriously. You got a lot of drugged up race soldiers who are disgruntled, dissatisfied, and looking to beat on a dark person. That very well could be what we're experiencing in a lot of these situations. So I think in the workplace, I think it is very important to be able to identify, hey, this is not just everyday racism. This is not just everyday typical abuse. This is, ventured into something where we're talking about violence, where I could be harmed. This is dangerous. I need to extricate. That's one. And I also think it's important to just review, discuss, add into what we're thinking about. When you are at a job that is a part-time situation, a job that is, you are not dependent on this. Like if you lose this job, no one is going to starve, right? Who is dependent on your income to eat. No one is going to starve. The Wi-Fi will not be shut off at the residence. Car insurance will be paid. Like identifying when you're in that sort of work situation as opposed to when you don't have that sort of flexibility. Because I think there are, at least for me, I would have very different counter-racist code if I am in the former situation where this is not my career. I'm not looking to be at this job for the next 5 years, 10 years. This is not my career. This is just something where I can make, a few pennies for the time being until I move on to whatever else I have in my plans. This is not even something that's in my 1-year plan. I think you would have a very different counter-racist approach to that sort of situation as opposed to this is something that I am dependent on, that I cannot forfeit this job. I think that's something to consider as well, because if you're having safety issues popping up on a job that is not necessary, like, oh man, there should be the threshold should be real low in terms of tolerating any sort of abuse. So that was just one thing I wanted to make sure we touched on today. If folks have, perhaps if Emmy is listening, she can give us an update on her situation. I do know I checked in with her. She survived, and she also was able to call in enforcements. I would definitely say that. Maybe that's something that we have not discussed. People who work jobs where it's something overnight. If you are driving, I know they have Uber and Lyft and all that stuff. If you're driving, or if you're in some sort of overnight situation where you're dealing with people, I would say that, just in my view, could be slightly more dangerous because of the hour, likelihood of, things happening once it gets dark and what have you. Might be good if you can at least call someone and say, hey, if something ever goes down here, is it okay if I can call you, that you can stay on the phone, as Thomas suggested to Emmy this past weekend? We can kind of stay on the phone and talk through this. I know you tend to have later hours for whatever reason, or if they live close enough that you could even be here. If an emergency goes down, if something happens and, I'm feeling in harm's way and I'm not going to be able to leave, if you can just come and be here with me, that might be something good where you can kind of arrange that in advance. That way you don't have to get all that put together on the spot. But these are just things that I had not thought about before, that were raised or that we had not discussed in enough detail. Subjects that I thought bared further discussion, just from what happened with Emmy. Again, like I said, perhaps we'll get an update on her situation. If people have suggestions, if we have other people who have worked in those sort of situations where it's an overnight, you're by yourself, you don't have a whole lot of, other support staff and what have you to back you up. If somebody is, not behaving themselves, or you feel like there could be an imminent threat of danger, it's just you and you got to deal with whatever goes down. If people have been in that sort of situation and you have suggestions, I would think particularly females, because I know that would certainly change the dynamic in terms of your safety and what you're going to do. If we have folks who have ideas or suggestions for that type of workplace scenario, the number 641-715-3640, the code 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. This certainly isn't all about, that one situation or some of the things that I mentioned. If you have your own situation that you want to discuss, notes, observations, great. We certainly are including that, but these are just some of the things that I want to add into the dialogue this evening as we proceed. That said, folks called in, if we have suggestions with Emmy's kind of situation, first and foremost, if we have suggestions for how you would deal with that, threshold for that type of situation, or people who have any sort of workplace experience in that sort of environment, launch. I guess we should go directly to the source. Emmy, if you want to give the update, again, our apologies that you had to deal with that and the stress. I'm glad that she included like specific details about the stress she was experiencing, the direct anxiety, increased heart rate. This is why you end up with Nelson Ellis dying at 39. Gwen Eiffel passing away in her early 60s. This is why. 40 hours of that every week, and man, your stress level is going to be off the roof. So Emmy should be with us. Do you want to give an update if you're able to speak now?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Greetings, beautiful people. Yes, I will update you all. I will first comment. Yeah, the stress level is really high. One thing I failed to mention is that I had already begun to develop a physiological response to a particular time in the morning when I knew he would come down, because he follows a very strict routine for walking his dog. So I would use the reflection of the glass doors in the front to see who's coming out of the elevator and monitor the back door so I would know where he was, because of what he would do when he would come to the front. And so when I knew it was him, I would even just be shaking at my laptop just because, and I know that's probably not the most codified, but after having had the experiences that I had with this individual and knowing what I know about him and viewing him through the perspective that I do, it's very hard for me to have maintained a very nice level of calm and kind of blasé whenever he would be around, but it's not that. So yeah, and I loathe my weekends because Monday through Friday is busy, and then loathe my weekends for this an important part-time gig that I just want to do homework at, and here goes all this extra stuff. So Gus, thank you for playing it. I actually, after a day or two, I really kind of wanted to just move away from it. I didn't really want to be thinking too much about it. I knew I was going to send an email directly to the account manager that manages our account, because we're contracted, and go ahead and ensure that she is in fact reading the notes that I'm writing, because I hadn't spoken to her. And so I was pretty much just going to say, hey, I don't know if you know what's up, but you might want to go ahead and read the notes. And I'm not coming back. And so we can go ahead and have that conversation whenever you're ready. But she actually went ahead and emailed me. So I'll tell you that in a second. So what happens for the rest of the night? I had already been thinking about the situation, and I could see it ending badly. They had told me some stories before. By they, I mean the other concierges, about other people who have gotten into the building in these other kind of situations. So I already know that the building is vulnerable, and I've monitored the cameras, but like I said, there's no security. So if anything were to go down, it just goes down, and then hopefully people get called and arrive. I don't take white people like a joke. I don't really say that to many people, but I'll share that with you all. I don't think that, like, I don't treat them as robots or as, like, passive people around in situations, especially where I'm at. I catch a lot of white people watching me and stuff like that. So some people may say that's paranoia. I just think that I'm looking at reality, and it is what it is. So I'm very much aware of, like, the white people, and I don't play nice or anything like that. What I'm saying is I like to maintain a very healthy level of distance. And even smiles and handshakes and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, there's a part of me that's definitely watching out, because that's just what history has told me. That's what my observations have told me. So for me, that's what it is. I mean, I accept that. So I don't take this individual lightly. I had been telling other concierges as well, because I understand that they may not be looking at him the same way, and they might brush this off. So I'd always be making sure, like, that they know this is not a game. You can't just be like, whatever, I'll just speak to him and he'll be nice to me. Like, it doesn't matter how many good mornings you give this individual or how many smiles you give him. So anyway, I was already having told people what was going on, people in my life. I do know folks in D.C. So I live an hour away from where I work. I know that's a bit much, but this area is full of commuters. So I do have people who are, like, close by. And I told them, whatever, this is where I'm at, know where I'm at all times, because I do work in the middle of the night. I might need to crash, that kind of thing. So after I got off the phone with you all and broadcasting, I went ahead and called a black man. And I was like, this is what's going on. You need to go ahead and come on. He was like, all right. So he arrived. Like, he's on his way. He's like, well, let me get my life together and whatnot and come be with you. It was strange because my mother actually called, and my mother does not ever call me. I don't want to be long-winded, but I do want to tell you all, because I don't think it's a game at all. When I first went to re-listen to the broadcast, I wanted to, like, brush it off, and I listened and I actually laughed at myself. I was like, wow, Emmy, you really are doing, like, the most. But I think that was just like a defense mechanism, because when I listened to it the second time, I remember how I felt. So I wanted to give you all as much detail, that listen to your intuition. So my mother never calls me in the middle of the night. I work 11 to 7, so it's like 12:30. My mom calls, and I just tell her what's going on. And of course, I talk to my mom, so she knows a little bit about this individual, but I'm letting her have it the same way I let y'all have it. Like, raw, this is what I'm dealing with right now. And, she didn't even really have, like, a reason to call, and she didn't know what to call. And I felt like that's, making sure that other people know what's going on with you. I guess if that's something, I would definitely say that, like, if there's something going on, not just Kyle's listeners, but the people closest to you, making sure that somebody understands, like, what's up and where you are and that kind of stuff. So anyway, she gets off the phone. Then I have another resident rushes to the front desk. I knew exactly. I was like, okay, what's up? And he said, y'all need to get him. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, telling it to you all, like, the way I want to talk to you all, instead of, like, how I'd be talking to the police or something, or the law enforcement. So he's like, y'all need to get him. He's walking around with his gun. He's tripping. I'm fearing for my life. I had my child with me. I put her in the apartment, and I came down here. Under normal circumstances, if a resident has an issue with another resident, they need to call the police on their own. That is not something I would get involved in. However, given the circumstances, and this individual walking, like, I know he has a gun. We all know he has a gun. He's walking around the garage with his gun, walking on the clubhouse floor with his gun. They're exchanging words and stuff like that. I needed the police to understand that this is not just any individual. There's a record of this. So I'm calling from the front because I think the situation demands immediate attention and not something like, oh, okay, well, there's a guy and they're getting into it, but it's not a big deal at some apartment building, So anyway, I make sure that they understand that. They arrive in about like 5 or 10 minutes or so. Well, that area has tons of police around it anyway because it's a college area, but they arrive. The guy that came to complain went back upstairs. So the officer begins to ask me questions, and his stance is, why are you bothering us with someone who has a license to carry and he's carrying his gun? And I said, well, this individual is making threats and has been escalating. So he continues to ask me questions about why this guy didn't call. I said, you know what? I'm just going to call him down here, and I think you should ask him these questions directly. So, because I thought they were going to go upstairs. So I let them in the building with hey, I'm ready to send them right on up. But they actually want to talk to me. So I was like, okay, So I call him. I said, hey, can you come downstairs? The officer tried to stop me and say, well, we can just talk on speakerphone. I said, no. He's going to go ahead and come downstairs so that you all can speak. because I felt like there's another layer to this thing. Instead of it being like, hey, there's a guy on the premises with a gun, even though he lives here, he's, acting crazy and he could shoot somebody. It's now, well, the black concierge called about a white guy carrying a gun, so what, who cares? But when they realized that the guy who complained was white, things changed. So he comes downstairs, and I think he even recognizes one of the officers. So they began to chat it up. The other one leaves me alone. Everything's done. Like, I'm now out of the picture, thank goodness. And so they're, he's answering questions, and they're getting the information they want, whatever. It seems like there's some people who are training. Then all of a sudden, he goes back upstairs, and the officers leave. In this moment, I'm sitting here, I'm typing my notes, I'm thinking, like, this is crazy. Like, this is absolutely crazy. And I realized that nobody has actually confirmed whether or not this individual actually has a license to carry. So I put that in my notes. I said, the officers, I called them, they didn't even check. And so this is Virginia right now. That's something else I want to say. If there are other folks in Virginia, I would love to talk to you to see what it's like around where you're at. But where I'm at, this is what I'm seeing. We literally have an individual who can walk around with a gun, and because he's white, no one really cares whether or not he has a license to carry. And he has a record, noted record verbatim, with him saying you can put it on the record that I'm going to kill a spick or this, that, and third, and whatever, and it's okay. And the officers did not go upstairs, so I put that in my notes. That was that. The man arrived, thank goodness. I love black men. I'll just put that on the record too. Arrived and sat with me in the lobby for the whole night. And we didn't have any other interactions with the individual, so it was all good. Precautions, I told you all about: the mace, the recorder. We have a package room that has a door, and you can lock it. I kept it propped so that I could run into it. Like, bullets can't get through. It's not like a cheap wooden door or anything. It's legit. And showed exits and stuff like that, like in case, just to make sure. I did record the conversation with the police officers or the law enforcement officials, especially once I felt like this was not, like I was, again, back in hostile territory and even more hostile territory. I went ahead and recorded that conversation. I made sure I took extremely copious notes, informed everybody about what was going on. Then the account manager emails me. So back to that. The account manager emails me, thanks me for my copious notes and my diligence and documentation. I say, yeah. I make sure I put everything in notes because I don't want no issues. She says that she's had a run-in with this individual, so she knows that I'm not making it up. I said, cool, whatever, fine. She's like, oh, well, you can call me at any time. She does that whole white girl thing. I'm not falling for it. I don't care. You knew this situation was like this, and y'all as managers, as property managers, account managers, whatever, are supposed to manage situations, and y'all are effing up. But whatever. So I'm not at that location to get to the end of it. I'm really at this point, they'll relocate me to another place until I'm ready to quit. I did spend that night putting in applications. I do actually already have another job, so I'll take Gus's advice. I don't have any children. I'm not on the brink if, with this kind of thing. I won't be able to do a lot of stuff. It does affect me, but it's not like I will starve. I have to be honest about that. So I don't want to die just to chase money or whatever. I feel like that's really some white supremacist, slavery type thing, like a slave mentality I had, or something like I have to be here and do all that. I looked at that under any normal circumstances, leave. If my child told me that situation, I'd be like, leave. Screw that building. Whoever gets locked out, oh well, they'll call an Uber, go some other place, whatever. Although nothing happened, that's a risk. That really is a risk. You never know what people are doing in their apartments. For all I know, he could be getting drunk on whiskey, slitting his wrist, taking meth pills or something like that, coming to the front, and there it is. I did fear for the man that sat with me, but he had always let me know that, he would show up if need be. So I already knew that's what I was going to do. Now, when the white female account manager for the company I work with called me, she surprised me, called me, because she called me at 8:30, and I think that those are not professional hours, so I'll say that. I think professional hours stop after 6:30, 7 o'clock, because I understand we don't get off till 5, so if you were staying late and you needed to call me because you had a bunch of stuff to do, I could totally understand that, but at 8:30, I don't think that that's appropriate, but I took the call given the circumstances. So when she started doing the white girl stuff and putting on that annoying white girl voice, I paused. So there's an app that you can get on your phone where you can record phone calls. I'm pretty sure y'all know about it and have talked about it at some point. But if not, I have an iPhone and it's like Tape a Call or something like that. You can download the free version of it, which means that you can access like the first minute or two of whatever it is that you're recording until you purchase the $10 a year plan. I have not purchased a $10 a year plan because I don't necessarily need it, because I don't have to present these to anybody, but I do have them, and they just save them. And then when you pay the $10, you can get it. So when she started that, I was like, oh, hold on, I have a call. Hold on 1 second. Put her on hold. You have to dial in. I did that, recorded that entire conversation with her because she kept trying to pry for information. I don't trust her. She's white. I'm in a hostile situation that she knew about, that she let get this bad. And I'm supposed to sit here and listen to this voice and fall, like, into that trance or whatever. No. So I made sure I was dealing with her just like I was dealing with law enforcement, and I treated that situation the exact same way. So I recorded that conversation via phone. I highly recommend that y'all do that if you can. Like, if you end up, like, some supervisors will try not to respond to emails and will try to call and stuff like that. If you get that, you could just put them on hold real quick and then record the conversation in case you just need it, which goes back to documentation. I think, like, the one thing that's allowed the situation, because I also think about the other concierges. When I slipped up and when I talk about white people, they look at me like, wow, Emmy, you're really like a racist and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm trying to tell them, you don't understand where you're at and you don't understand what's going on. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying you need to keep your eyes open. Don't be chilling with these people eating their food and all this kind of craziness just because they smile in your face. But when you do that, you get demonized. But whatever, I don't want them. So I made sure to put in the notes all that kind of stuff and to heighten their, like, looking at this individual and a couple of other people, but this one in particular. So the only way I think that was really successful was because of the documentation. Me talking to the girls, the young ladies, the women, it wouldn't be anything if it's not documented. And that's what will hopefully help him get evicted, protect people, protect me if I'm ever back in that building or anybody else in that building. Like, I don't want it to be anybody else either, just because it's not me. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's going to be there. So thinking about that, and it's just chess. Like, I wrote notes, a couple of notes. I just want to say it's just like chess. If you play chess and, like, think about chess, that's all it is. It's constant moving pieces to make sure that you can, block the king. But anyway, so I'll keep you all posted in what happens, like, later. I have a ton of other workplace situations that I've dealt with and other codifications that I've practiced. Thank you all a lot for your concern and for listening to me. I know sometimes I think I talk a lot, but I do thank you all for letting me get this out and not making me crazy for telling you. So thanks.
Wow. Did you, really quick, did you do anything to manage your stress to replenish from all that? Because it sounds extremely traumatic.
Yeah, I did actually. I kind of just spent time. Like, I've detached a little bit. Like, I'm in school, so and I'm in math. Since you asked, I'll be honest. I love math. So I've taken, like, full advantage of just kind of getting into that. And then I also let my Netflix expire, so I went ahead and re-got it, even though I know TV is not that important, but I needed to disconnect. I didn't really feel like journaling and reading and meditating. I didn't want to do anything like that. I just wanted to chill, eat some good food, watch something that made me laugh or, like, just kind of took me out of it for a second. So I watched season 3, How to Get Away with Murder. Not to say, like, murder, but anyway, I watched that and was honest about it. Like, that's another thing I will say, like, in a real perspective, not like binge eating and watching TV, but talking with people. Like, I've let them know what's going on. So even, like, if a friend calls, like, girl, I need to tell you this. And, some people will think that, like, in all honesty, like, oh, he's not going to do nothing. Oh, you might, whatever. Like, no, seriously. People are dying every day. They're getting shot all over the place. And you might not just be hearing about it. I don't ever want that to be me or you. So sharing it. But I didn't get to go to the spa. I haven't been able to, like, call off a life or anything like that. But, yep, and looking forward to being able to tell you all the update. And since it ended well, like, I'm alive, my man's alive, and, like, nobody ended up getting shot, and I'm not there and at another location and I have another job, it kind of ended up well. So I feel like it's just a lesson So the stress is real, but I'm black in a system of white supremacy. So what can I expect?
Terrorism, and plenty of it. Almost sorry I asked. Didn't know we were going to get to how to get away with murder. Woof. Black self-respect. The gentleman who came in to assist and provide a little support. Outstanding. High commendations to him and for you for getting through that, because that is, man, I mean, it's so unhealthy. I mean, the damage that does to you, like spiritually and just physiologically, being in that sort of environment with a, in my view, a direct imminent threat. And having to, this is, the cost of just trying to get a few coins to exist on a planet, universe dominated by white supremacy. Documentation, I thought that was great. Documenting, recording. I think there are free apps, and if you mention, let me know. I think I have mentioned some of the free apps on this program before that listeners have mentioned that they said that they use. I think they have mentioned iPhones specifically, or whatever type of mobile device that you have. But we've mentioned some free ones already that you can use, where you can record the whole conversation and you'll have it right there at your fingertips once the conversation ends. So if you need it, I can check back, dig through my email, and I'm pretty sure I could get the name of those apps that are free, completely free. Also, the whites, the race soldiers in this situation, and in any situation, they're going to protect themselves. When you pointed out, I thought it was great. They are responsible for this situation. For listeners, if you can imagine a situation where whites would allow an armed black female or male to stomp around the premises and declare who they are going to kill or harm, if they don't do things in accordance with their wishes, and to threaten employees of the property. I mean, if you can imagine what world this would happen. Anyway, but they allowed this situation, so they're going to be the ones that are looking to cover themselves to make it look like they didn't do anything. Same way where you were talking about the response of the enforcement officials changed when it was originally, oh, this nigger woman called the police about a white man who is a legal gun owner, to, oh, a white person. Oh, man, maybe this is serious. We should, settle in and really do some investigating. Standard operating procedure, even on the job, something, to kind of keep in mind in dealing with these types of situations. But the company, the job, they're going to protect themselves in these situations, even when you are a direct victim of violence. And to definitely, first thing you said, to trust your instincts. I think Mr. Fuller talks about that. Sometimes messages are sent just to you. And when you're in a workplace situation where you might be isolated, where it is just you, that message might be coming in huge that, this has become an alarmingly dangerous situation. We need to leave immediately. Maybe that's just the message. Sometimes it's that clear. And I think the system of white supremacy, they make it so difficult because the environment is saturated with violence. It's saturated with danger. It can make it difficult to even assess that or just take it seriously. And then also, this is how I pay my bills. I need these coins. That situation can be difficult as well. But I mean, sometimes it's just got to be, hey, we can, figure out things. If I die, well, hey, we don't have to worry about anything. If I get shot, that might too harm my job. If I get, injured or something happens, and I might be out of work, workers' comp and all that can go really bad for non-white people, victims of racism. So it's a lot to consider. If we had folks who had any suggestions for dealing with this type of situation, as I said, for people specifically, because we have callers, a lot of them, to my understanding, who work at night, where I think you might be a bit more vulnerable, particularly if you work at night in an environment where you are isolated. It's just going to be you. If you have suggestions for how, you would deal with that sort of situation, to what Emmy talked about specifically, where you got this armed white threat, what's the threshold for when you leave? Hey, whatever it is, I got to go. I'm going to take my notes. I'm going to go home. I'm going to make sure that I live to figure out what's going to happen, as opposed to this potentially being it, and I have no further say about anything. Folks, number again, 641-715-3640, the code 564-943#. Folks who have a hand up, line should be open. Do we have commentary on what happened with Emmy's situation specifically? If you have a hand up, you should be with us.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, Roz. Good to hear from you. I hope you and the whole family are doing well. Still thinking of you and loss of your father-in-law.
Thank you so much. It's been very interesting. Actually, I have a workplace racism incident, sadly related to anti-blackness surrounding his passing. I'll deal with that later. But man, Emmy, jeez, I'm just completely flabbergasted and I'm so sorry that you had to deal with something like that. That just listening to the recording alone actually stressed me out. I thought it was live, and I was like, oh my goodness, is she going through this now? And then when I figured it happened already, I was like, okay, well, it happened already. And when she said she was okay, I was good. Man, I think you handled that really well. I would just suggest to people, if you work in a situation where you might be isolated, if you do have friends or family or a combination of the two, triage the people you're close to as far as who you're going to contact first, and kind of like Emmy has done, and like Gus was saying, preemptively think of this. Don't wait until an emergency to actually be stressed out, not necessarily thinking at your optimum and trying to facilitate assistance. You want to think of that beforehand. Hey, if this happens, will I be able to call you? Would you be able to come and spend some time with me, stay on the phone with me, something so that you have a backup in case something does really, really get bad, that someone else can actually call law enforcement. They'll know where you are, all of those kinds of things. I think that's very important. There's a great book written by an ex-CIA agent. I think his name is Jason Hansen. And the book is called Spy Secrets That Can Save Your Life. And he basically does lectures. There's videos on YouTube, and it deals with basically he's taking information he's garnered as decades-long CIA agent and providing it to normal citizens so that they can use some of these techniques to protect themselves in everyday situations. He deals with situational awareness, how to read people, how to read body language. Also, he gives personal situations where he's had to make potentially life-altering decisions so that you can kind of get some context for triaging your response to certain things depending on what's happening. Also, he provides information on how to tell if you're being followed, whether you're being followed in a car, whether you're being followed on foot, and what to do about those things. So I think that's a really, really good book. It's called Spy Secrets That Can Save Your Life. It's not too expensive at all. From what I know, I've got it for a pretty decent price on Amazon, but it's really, really good. That's where I learned about the tactical pen, and he also provides information about other self-defense and safety things that you can utilize to protect yourself. But that's something that I think is important, because sometimes, like Gus was saying, a lot of time our attention, I think really the system just thwarts our ability to think preemptively. And the system of white supremacy thinks about destroying us preemptively. It's always premeditated. Whatever happens to you is premeditated. They do things on the spot, but even the things they do on the spot is still premeditated. So we have to now premeditate situations that we're walking into and try to think about how we function when you walk in a building. You make sure that you're aware of all the different exits, how many exits there are. Be aware of people, who's around you, who's near you, what they're doing. This is stuff that we don't normally talk about. These are things that we don't necessarily train our children to do, but it's something that is essential to our survival, because we are walking around in a situation where war is being practiced against us, and the vast majority of us don't know that. That's why I always have said on the show, when I leave my house to go to work, thank goodness I'm not working right now because New Jersey Transit's a nightmare, but when I left my house to go to work, when I walked out the door, and even when I'm in my house, I think of myself as an intergenerational prisoner of war who is viewed by everyone who is white, and especially white people, as an insurgent, a person that's part of an insurgent population. And when you walk around with that awareness, it can be agitating. It can be just a lot. Sometimes it can be stressful, but for me, it's the safest way to function in order to make sure that I get home every night. And that is something I think about when I leave the house. How am I going to get home? I'm even preemptive about that. So these are all things we have to think about, and it's something that we shouldn't have to think about, but this is the world that we live in. And like Dr. Wilson was saying, we have to be honest with ourselves about what we're dealing with. And when we do so, I think these thoughts and these ways of processing reality will help us to be able to see things before they happen, and hopefully make life-saving decisions in the right moment. And again, just be preemptive. If you have a friends and family list, call them, have poignant discussion with them, be honest with them, and say, hey, if something happens at 3 a.m, can I call you? If they say yes, and you put them on the list. Where on the list depends on your relationship with them. hey, I'm going to call this person first, this person second, this person third, in case somebody's not available or something's going on with that person and they're not able to work with you in that moment. That's what you want to do. So thank you very much, Gus. And I'll give my situation down the line. But I'm glad that you're safe, Emmy, and please keep doing the right things, making the right decisions for yourself. You did a great job with that situation, even within that stress. So thank you. I'll keep my line.
Appreciate that, Roz. Did other folks have suggestions for Emmy, or just suggestions in general if you're in these overnight situations, what you would recommend, or just when, hey, the job situation has become dangerous and we want to make sure we take correct action? Any other suggestions, comments to this situation specifically?
Can I be heard?
Greetings, Alabama.
Hello. Big Victim from Birmingham, Alabama. How you doing, Gus? And to the callers and listeners. Amy, I remember, I think the firefighter had told you had a little tactical pen and everything. And, I think that, you should have been gone out, got yourself out of that situation. You dealing with a psychopath. You don't know that man on steroids, or you don't know what that white man on. You should have been gone. You in school, you ought to try. I don't know if they still got it. Do they have still work study or somewhere you could stay at school and make you some money? But me personally, shoot, when I go to my NA meetings, I go to a church and I be thinking about Dylan Roof, and because white folks come up in there and everything. I be thinking about Dylan Roof. I keep a pistol in my pocket. I don't tell nobody. Y'all the only ones I'm telling right now. But I keep a pistol on me. You got all these crazy folks coming up there with crazy white folks looking crazy. They bring the same. They keep that mess going up there in their meetings. But that tactical pen ain't gonna help you. Like I said, if you at home, you staying with your parents and everything, I'll try to get on work study if they still got it going on and everything. But that's all I wanted to share. Thank you for letting me share. And I'll mute my line, Gus.
Appreciate that, Big Victim in Alabama. Do you have other suggestions, folks that wanted to comment on Emmy's situation or being isolated in these late night jobs?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, everyone. My first thought would have been to make some sort of excuse and leave. But I think she did probably the next best thing by getting a witness to show up on the job. In my experiences before retirement, with the fire department, it's unique in the way that there's a natural course of danger in the first place by being a firefighter that you're aware of. And then you have your workplace racism also. And I have taken advantage of the opportunity of just leaving in certain situations. I can recall even on 9/11, I was on duty that morning. And fortunately for me, I was part of my station duties. In the fire department, you do station duties early in the morning. And mine was to clean up in the living room area. And what I would normally do was turn on television, and as I'm cleaning around the area, would watch the news, and that was the first thing on. That was the first thing on. And when I saw it, it didn't take me no more than about maybe 20, 30 minutes. Because, we're on duty at 7 o'clock in the morning. I would say by 7:45 I was gone. Because I didn't know on how far-reaching the issue of 9/11 would be, and I did not want to be in the white person's uniform. So I knew that, so I made an excuse and left. There's no issue in leaving for that day or leaving permanently. It depends on, as far as that person is concerned, I don't see that getting better. And if so the threat will still be around. I don't see that getting any better if the person is going to be there. I don't know how long that person plans on staying there, but just something to think about as far as that's concerned. But like I said, as far as the immediate moment, I think you did the next best thing, which is to bring in someone to be like a witness, or there be at least be a comfort by having someone around. And that's all I can think about right now. Thank you.
Appreciate that, retired firefighter. Do we have other folks who dialed in who had suggestions for Emmy's situation, or in general for people who might be vulnerable working late night by themselves? Any other folks who had suggestions for this situation specifically? Oh, see one more. We'll not for this one. We'll see if they dialed in with their own situation. Any other last folks dialed in with a suggestion with this situation specifically, what Emmy's dealing with, or the late night?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Caller in Ohio.
Okay. Hello to Gus the host and to all the other callers and listeners. Unfortunately, I walked away from my home, so I guess she's no longer at that job. Is that correct?
It sounds like she's still there. I think, if I recall correctly, I think she said they were transferring her to a different site while she's still employed with the company, and that she's looking for other employment still, but she's just at a different location until she moves on, if I heard correctly.
Okay, great. I guess some of the suggestions I just want to make, because, I'm glad that incredibly that they were hurrying up and get her to another place. But I think sometimes that when we come in, and I know how it is, but sometimes when we work at, we can't do anything about it. But like she said, she's at a front desk. One thing we need to notice where our exits at. How sometimes the door we come in, we need to know where our exits are at, and how close we are to our exits. And I think the other thing too that we have to have in our mind, just how much you're going to put up with. I know we all need our money, you know what I'm saying? We all need our points and stuff like that. But I just think that we have to have it in our mind, because the other thing is too, like, just listening to what she was saying, well, the first part, when you played that clip, and, he's walking around with his gun being shown. And, a lot of times I can read things and we'll talk about mental illness among Black people. But what a lot of people don't talk about is mental illness among white people. And, they are always, too, given the benefit of the doubt. So I think, like you talked about the tactical pen, I think, sometimes, too, you have to look at, because I know how it is. You might have to look at what's all on your desk, things that can be used as weapons. And I think one of the biggest things, though, to me is, like, noticing your exits. Even if you sit in the way, you may have a back way out. I know, like, at the job that I'm at now, and I'm not the best, it's a temporary job, but I'm not really pretty much having any problems. But my cubby is, like, in the back. And where I'm at is one way in my cubby and one way out. Well, there is a wall that I could crawl. It's not up to the ceiling that I could climb over should things, something, happen. But that's one of the things that I look at. And I can remember another job I had, and we were down in this area, and I mean, we were back like in the far corner, and I even told one of my seatmates, I said, man, I said, something was to happen down here. I said, we would have nowhere to go, because that's just how far back we were, and we were back up in this corner. And at one time, my seat was like the furthest seat away from the entrance door to any entrance door in the building, because I was just that deep up in that corner. And then not only on top of that, my seat, the back of my seat was to everybody. So my back was to everybody. So, other than having a mirror like on my desk, I would not be able to see what's going on behind me. So I just think that's one of the big things. And I think that also too, overnight, be as compact with the stuff that you have to carry to work with. With women, we carry a pocketbook, things like that. And, just, have yourself mapped out. What would you do, should something happen? And then, like I said, too, I mean, I'm glad that they're transferring her, but, let's pay attention to our exes. Let's try to, like we say, map out ways of how can I escape, should something happen. And I think the other thing that we do have to, not that we could do anything about it, but I guess when I say that, decide for yourself how much you're going to take, I'm saying, is my life worth this? Because I do think that one of the things, like I said, we don't talk about, and they're not going to talk about, is the level of mental illness among white people. And you're sitting around here working with people every day, white people I'm talking about, who have some serious mental illness. And I'll say this, then I'll mute myself, and not to mention what can trigger them, even just the fact that, we're a black person coming to work every day, sit down in the seat working, and somewhere in their mind, they don't like that. They have a serious issue with that. And I told a friend one time, I said, you have to keep in mind, that I said, there are white people in this building who just, in their mind, they are just thoroughly upset because there were niggers working in this building with me, and that just shouldn't be the case. So we have to, keep those type of things in mind, what is my life worth? And I would like to say that it's priceless to some of the stuff that we may have to deal with on the job. And when things get to the point of danger, that I have to be able to say, well, I have to walk away from here. There's another job somewhere. So I just wanted to throw that out. And like I say, just map your interests and your exits. Notice where you come in. Notice all your exits. Notice where you're at. Be prepared. You might have to climb over walls and stuff to, escape with your life, So I'll mute myself with that.
Very important in terms of knowing where the exits are, where your place of employment, or if you're in school. I would say really any environment in the system of white supremacy, because just things happen all the time, but particularly be aware all of the exits and what have you, particularly mindful if you, like our caller in Ohio just said, oh, wow, they got me stuck back here, isolated from any exits. If something should happen, like that's something to be mindful of as well, that I need to be especially alert, because I'm going to have the furthest to go to get out of here, which means I don't have a whole lot of time to dally. I'm going to have to get moving, depending on where I am. And maybe even inquiring about getting that rectified, because if something happens, maybe I can be put in a better location, a safer location. Other folks, if you all had commentary, but I do think those are two important points. Also, if you work in a job environment where people are allowed to have firearms, because it seems like that's a growing trend as well, even if you work like in education, right? They're talking about on different campuses allowing firearms if you have the permit for it and what have you. How does that alter your workplace counter-racism code if you work in an environment? And I guess this would count for if we have non-white enforcement officials as well, because you have, armed race soldiers in your work environment. How does that change your workplace code? And then how do we equate this is my threshold, meaning this is how much I'm going to tolerate on this job, regardless of what the situation is? How do we come to that conclusion? And, what is, or have we even done that? I guess that's something to ask as well. But other folks, if you have your own commentary, certainly if we have suggestions for Emmy, commentary for her, feel free. But if you have your own situation that you would like to discuss, your own views or something you'd like to share, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
report on something good, I think. Recently, I reported some incorrect behavior on an associate of mine who is definitely a suspected racist. She's a female from Croatia that really, ever since she's been working with me in the shoe department and the retail environment, she's had a real insecure, bad attitude, and just really aggressive with associates and customers. So about 3 weeks ago, she, pretty much when she first started, we became enemies because, I didn't really tolerate it. So I built up a code to just kind of ignore her, just no talking at all. Only time we interacted is, if it's associates involved. So over time, she considered me to be a nice guy, because I just really didn't talk to her to the point where, she's bringing me birthday cake and offering me a piece of that. But in the back of my mind, it's not changing how I see you. So about 3 weeks ago, I was dealing with a customer. She had asked me for some shoes. I went to go get it. And then this older white woman, she approaches her and scans the same stuff out for her. And, I'm coming out with the stuff, and she starts interrogating the woman like, hey, why'd you just make me do that? And the customer is telling her, well, I told you that he was getting it for me. And, just kind of like ending it right there. And just a real aggressive, mean manner. She just pressed her again, like, why'd you make me do that? Just got real tense, and I'm not saying nothing. And the lady just kind of answered her again, like, this is kind of over with. Then she did it again to the point where everyone in that area started looking at her until she went away. Now, that customer, she never made a complaint to management, but I reported her incorrect behavior on the job, which made my manager kind of like inclined to write a statement on her. And the only reason she found out about that is because one of my customers, who's a black woman, just kind of approached her and said, hey, this lady over here, every time I come in the store, she always has a bad attitude. She had saw what happened. So the customer, the black woman, kind of reported to my manager. So she just put that in the back of her hand. Now, the following day, the lady did something real crazy. So I'm sorry, real racist, I would say. Sorry. There was a black woman who came in the store. She had been on the website of the company, saw a pair of shoes she wanted. So she approached this white woman at the register, who I guess is dealing with someone already, and said, are you the only one working here? And the racist woman, who I suspect, sarcastically told her, obviously, apparently so. Real rude. So the customer's kind of stunned, and then the lady points at me, and she says, you see, they're black. You see that black? You see, they're black. As it's her way of saying there's someone that can help you. Now, the lady approached me real, she was furious. I mean, you don't come in the store expecting that. And the lady was just like, you know what, if I didn't respect my elders, I would have cursed this woman out. She's rude as F-U-C-K. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, kind of expect that. But I dealt with her. I eased all that. And while I'm bringing her up, she's saying, hey, is this lady going to make commission off this? I'm like, no. She's like, well, what just happened? I think you should tell a manager or someone. There is no managers there. She just like really wanted me to report what happened. So I did what the customer wanted. I reported that incorrect behavior to the manager and the supervisor the next day. And I just left it at. Now, about 5 days later, management comes to me and says, HR would like you to write a statement about what happened. So I did. Real detail, exactly what happened. I didn't even see it happen. I just saw the outcome of it. And about a week later after that, the woman got terminated from the job. And it's funny because she didn't suspect it was me, that did it. She just assumed it was other females on the job. She just really hated, but just giving those little reports led to her termination. And I later found out that she had some kind of agreement with the HR manager that she had so many complaints before that she was to stay 1 year without her name being mentioned in the complaint. And she kind of admitted this online. So those incidents of her behavior got her terminated. But it really would have never happened if I didn't speak up. So it's kind of a celebration for me to get rid of a suspected racist on the job. That's my report.
Spectacular. Wow. That is outstanding. If you can get a white person, get them terminated, that is a great accomplishment. They'll probably be replaced by another racist, but, that's great. If anything, I would say that is, in my view, can show the value of just reporting, just being about correct behavior on the job. It's not about snitching. It's not like you're on the job celebrating doing cartwheels. Like, yes, just we want to be about doing correct things. We see incorrect things happening. This is a problem. This, something should be done about this. Yes. And we just go from there. But that's outstanding. Observe, document, and even with that, now it seems like she had been doing incorrect things by her own testimony for a long time. It's been my experience, black people generally, they are not that patient with black people who continue to make errors and errors and errors. If other folks, so are you going to continue with the behavior in terms of reporting if you're seeing incorrect behavior from whites reporting, that you'll continue with that behavior?
Well, definitely. To be honest, a lot of them really don't like talking to me because I report them immediately. I just check incorrect behavior. But I just find it kind of odd that this woman around customers and witnesses, she walked up to one of my coworkers and called her a witch. And it sounded like, the other word. And these people all wrote statements and nothing happened to her. But when it came to just her throwing out colors and it seemed kind of racial, it seemed like that was the nail in the coffin. And this is only the second time I've seen someone seems like almost directly get fired for saying something negative about a non-white black person. I used to have, when I first started here, we had a black manager, and I don't know if it's by coincidence, but the string of people she was hiring were like all black. It was like a black man, black man, black man. And there was this anti-sexual white guy on the job who made the comment. He made two comments. He says, "Is this manager looking for a husband?" That was number one.
Wow.
And then this is the comment that I guess he admitted that got him fired in the HR office. His next comment was, "It's starting to look like Africa in here." So, I guess that just shows the power of what you say can get you terminated. If the policy allows it. I guess I'd have to review my policy and procedure just to see, how direct that is. But I do compliance training where discriminating against a customer can lead to my termination. I know that they force every associate to go through compliance training every year. So I could imagine that those comments and incorrect behavior can get you out the door.
Well, policy and procedure, absolutely. Great recommendation to review that yourself, just to be refreshed, all of us, to make sure we are in compliance and just to see what's there, if there are any updates, what have you. But in terms of the white woman just behaving in this reckless and terroristic manner with impunity, that it's been my experience. That's whites, all areas of people activity. It doesn't matter the field of employment. That seems to be the way that they behave, because that's just what they're accustomed to, that I can do whatever I want and there will be little, if any, repercussions. Certainly nothing that's going to ruin my day or even mess up the next 15 minutes of my life. So, I'm just going to do what I want. I've seen that sort of behavior consistently. And in terms of these people getting fired, well, number one, the white male, I think you said he was quote unquote gay or what have you. that right there, not ignorant about racism, not an ally to black people, as has been alleged frequently, still able to practice white supremacy. But these comments and what have you coming up where you said at least 2 instances where the white person made some sort of racist comment and they got fired. It could be that, hey, they just don't want to deal with anything like that. We're more about being refined. You're not supposed to have any type of flagrant comment like that. And we're just, anything that even sounds like that, we're going to go ahead and let you go. That could be how they function there. It's been my experience that a lot of workplaces, that's not the approach they take in terms of no one gets fired for anything. It doesn't matter what they said, how many witnesses and statements or what have. I've seen that a lot. In fact, that tends to be what I see more often than not. But either way, it's, I think, great practice to document and just be serious about these situations, because it can end up becoming something where it is serious, and who knows, you might even get a race soldier terminated, see if they can get transferred down the road or what have you, where you don't have to deal with them directly. Did other folks that dialed in have comments or suggestions, thoughts on what they've heard so far? If you want to share your own situation, line should be open.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking my call. This is Red from Ohio. I guess something really brief. First, I did want to thank Cindy for the update, and I kind of feel like I'm alone in this, especially when being around my family, and so definitely hearing from you is very encouraging for me. With my plantation, I know I have been speaking about how stressed I have been over the new race soldier the racist that is my supervisor, and has been my supervisor for several months now. But what I'm trying to do at this point is, because I feel like he is extremely refined, and especially with the fact that when he came onto the position, he said, "Oh, well, I don't like to micromanage," and just different things that he said that he does not like to do, and he's doing the exact opposite. And I don't feel, and of course, just learning, and I keep learning, but just learning what I've obtained from the C.O.W.S is that just not giving these racists the benefit of the doubt. I feel like he literally said those things to be deceptive and to put me off my guard, which I somewhat was initially. I did not open up to him, and I still don't. And like I said in the past, he likes to ask questions about what I'm doing over the weekend. I say basically nothing, and then he likes to talk about what his plans are, as if I care. And the only reason why I should speak to him is because he prefers to say things over the phone rather than through email. And another thing that I'm noticing with him is that I will have to answer the same question 3 and 4 times. And I know that I feel like he is deliberately doing that. Because I'm sure that being a supervisor, they have to take some type of classes just because of, or training, just because of the training that they make regular associates take as far as listening, and especially when it comes to clients or customers, what have you. And he just blatantly doesn't do that. So I'm kind of almost at the point now to being smart aleck, but I've been really biting my tongue and so forth. He likes to ask for the same information, 2 and 3 times. He's finally, I don't know if someone else has said something to him about it, but just recently he asked for the same information from our little group for the second time, and he at least put in the email, I know I'm asking you again, but can you go ahead and please give me the information again? So, and also today when I had to speak to him, he also mentioned the fact that he needs to catch up on his tan, and all I said was, which I appreciate that response. Now that is something that I learned from the C.O.W.S. But what I'm trying to do is channel my frustration into a teaching moment, so that way I can better understand the tactics of a refined racist, especially being a supervisor, somebody who's supposed to be really open. So that's what I'm trying to do. I definitely have not mastered it yet or anywhere close to that, but at least I'm not just trying to just let it just completely frustrate me and try to make a better use of my time while having to give time to the plantation. The last thing was that I have been telling my supervisor about a problem that I've been having with different work that I've been getting incorrectly, and told him, just kept giving me excuses, or he kept saying, well, just wait. I told, the different area about it. Let me just wait a little longer. And so I was on PTO. I was on vacation, and a white woman apparently was helping me out with my work. And this is a white woman that I've been working with for at least a couple of years. And she doesn't just help me out, she helps different people out. But of course, I still suspect everyone. Well, she was helping me out, and she brought up the issue to him because she included me on the email. And the next thing you know, the problem was finally resolved. And so it's definitely just, the power of, white women. And so I always keep that in the front of my mind, that white men are not alone in the system of racism, white supremacy. White women, they do speak to each other, but at least in this moment, it did help me out to where it finally took a white woman to reach out to him and say, you know what, there is this problem, and then the problem finally stopped. So that's all I have to share this week. Thank you for listening.
Wow. With the first situation where this white guy, guest manager, who is doing the micromanaging, or I don't even know what you call that, just being annoying and racist to come and just pester you for the same information, you can put that in the time wasting, where whites do a lot of that, just coming in and finding different ways of wasting our time and energy. I do know that frequently whites, they really enjoy just wasting your time and doing things to get us upset. And when they can see that it's getting on our nerves, like when they can see our nonverbal responses, Roz was talking about that earlier, they can see our nonverbal cues that we're getting angry, or if we verbalize that we're upset and that sort of thing, we look like we're about, ready to curse them out when they come and ask us for the 10th time for the exact same information. That's what they want. That's the reason that they're doing this sometimes, just to be annoying. And I and even some of our other listeners have found that when you don't respond, in fact, when you just factor that in, like from the beginning, that this is a part of my job to give the same answer 10 times over the next week, where he's going to come or she will come and ask the same question for the same data for, 10, 15 times. That'll be a part of my job. And that'll be one of the primary ways that they practice racism over the next 2 weeks, or as long as I'm here, to just do that, to nag me. And knowing that, I'm not going to respond. Every time, I'm just going to answer their question the exact same way, the exact same tone. And some people have found that eventually extinguishes the behavior when they see that, this person is not, they're not going to chimp out. They're not going to get upset, so I can snicker about that at my desk for the next 5 minutes and then wait an hour or 2 days and come back and ask for the exact same information. When they don't do that, sometimes they lose interest. I've seen that happen. And then the last thing, I've seen that many times. In fact, sometimes that's the only way to get problems resolved, is to get one white person to intervene and deal with another white person. I think Emmy had talked about that earlier with the enforcement officials and getting them called and everything. Sometimes that's the only way to get the problem, resolved, period, is just to have the white people talk amongst themselves and find a permanent resolution, because they just ignore any of the non-white folks present. They know we are not in charge. Folks have any, and I'm glad to hear you got some time off. Phenomenal. Got to take time to replenish. Did other folks have commentary suggestions for what we heard from Red in Ohio? Any of our other listeners, or your own situation? Feel free.
I'm sorry, Gus, if I can add one more thing.
Absolutely.
Really quick. And another thing I've noticed, I've at least trying to pick up on what at least this refined racist is showing me. And I know that we spoke about it, or I know they were spoken about on workplace racism before, but how whites, they don't like to look bad to other whites. And he had sent me a notice. I had asked him a question, and this time it was something systemic. So it wasn't just about procedures to where he can come back and say to me, well, I'm challenging you, or I'm empowering you to, make the decision for yourself, just basically hiding the fact that he didn't know the answer. But I went to him about what I thought was a systemic issue, and wasn't really getting anywhere with just taking other avenues. And so I just finally took it upon myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to, and this time it was like it had to do with monetary, with money. So I'm like, you know what? Oh, well, this isn't my money, and I still need to resolve this issue. So I went ahead and just reimbursed the file, whatever. So he had sent me an email, and he said, well, next time, he said basically something along the lines, well, in the future, just try to avoid this from happening so I don't have to go to, and he basically listed other whites that he did, so he wouldn't have to go to them. So I just thought that was, just another example how they really don't like to look bad to other whites, and I feel like he's trying to position himself as being like a young go-getter supervisor who is trying to move up within the company. And I just erased the email. I'm like, I'm not going to keep responding to this nonsense. But that's the last thing I wanted to add. Thank you.
Right on. A lot of folks have noted that over the years in terms of whites not wanting to look like they don't have all the information, or they got to look bad, particularly in front of Black people, absolutely hating that and doing everything that they can to avoid those types of situations. But right on, toss that email in the trash. We have other folks who had commentary, suggestions on what we've heard thus far, or if you have your own situation. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. Other folks have commentary, feel free.
That's good. Have you heard?
Yes, sir.
When you were talking about being on a job and having a person ask you the same question and having to repeat the same answer, the electable Negro is consumption, energy consumption, time consumption, and it's narcissistic consumption, because I've always postulated that racism, white supremacy, and there was a Black female earlier that said, you don't know what kind of mental illness these white people have. All of them are mentally ill. They all are racist, so they are all mentally ill, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion. And for me, the three main mental illnesses that they exhibit is narcissism, sociopathy, and psychopathy. And that is just the narcissistic consumptive aspect of how they function. They have to have your attention. And it's almost like a petulant child when Dr. Wilson speaks of Black people being the parent group, and white people being the child, and the child that has now taken over by murdering their parents. And to me, that's what that is. It's basically that childlike narcissism that plays itself out in a diabolical, beastly adult. And it's just something you have to be vigilant about, because you have those cases where they'll always try to get that attention from you. And if they feel that they're not getting it, they'll ratchet up their behavior until they get what they are looking for, which is that feeding off of your energy. So yeah, you just made me think of that when you were talking earlier. To get to the situation I was dealing with, very interesting, because after my father-in-law passed away, we specifically went to a Black funeral home to facilitate his funeral and everything else. And that was, that's just how we do. Anything we do, we try to deal with Black people first. And if there are no Black people available that we can deal with, then of course we'll have to go to the next best thing, which we try to keep it non-white. So ultimately, we found the Black funeral home. We decided to use them to facilitate the ceremony and everything. We did that. And after the ceremony, essentially, my father-in-law had multiple life insurance policies to cover the payment for the funeral, as far as just the main coverage of everything. So the funeral home has to actually report the death to the insurance company and then forward them a copy of the death certificate or a copy of the obituary to facilitate the release of the life insurance to pay them and whatever is left to go to the beneficiaries. So the woman there says she's going to do it, the black female, and she said, yeah, this is a service we provide because we know that when people are going through the grieving process, sometimes, you're just not able to get these things facilitated. Or you just might not be thinking straight to do it. So we were like really happy about that and said, thank you, no problem. So she went ahead and did so. So there were about 2 policies that she put through. The main one ended up getting delayed because she had my wife sign like an affidavit that stated if they were not paid within, I believe it's 30 days, that we would have to pay like a fee on top of just the regular payment that was due. So when she put it through, this would have been right after the funeral, probably like the week after, within the week after. So we were like, okay, this should be okay. So come to find out, weeks have passed. They said that the death was reported, but no proof of death came through, no death certificate, no obituary. So that has offset them receiving the money on time because now they have to go through this whole process to complete it. And she did that with that policy and then a pension situation. And the pension situation she wasn't supposed to deal with in the first place. That's something I was supposed to deal with as the executive of the estate. So they said they got report of the death but also got no proof. The insurance company said that they had gotten the report of the death. They got the form that she was supposed to fill out, but she never signed it. And as we were going through this, and mind you, we have them to call them. They also did something where my father-in-law actually told us numerous times he was born in 1928, but the federal government dictated that he was born in 1930. So all of his records, as far as the state's concerned, says 1930, but the official documents. But we were going to make sure that the headstone said what he said because he came from a time where they didn't keep accurate records, things like that. So they kept changing his birth, the year of his birth, as a young man. That kept happening to him. But he always said, yes, I was born 1928. So that's what we were going to have put on the, there's a plaque that they have there now while we're getting the headstone prepared. So when we went, that wasn't done properly. It was listed as 1930, though. My wife and I were in the office discussing with her this whole situation, and she said it would be done. You have this insurance thing that's being thrown off now because she didn't sign the documentation. Now, she's been doing this for 26 years, so I'm thinking, somebody's doing this for 26 years. Why would she all of a sudden forget now? And then the pension, she pushed that through, again, incomplete, and it wasn't something she was supposed to deal with either. So now everything has been messed up to the point where my mother-in-law was supposed to get a widower's benefit now that he's passed away because he was a former correction officer, so she gets a widower's benefit. So everything that this woman messed up the widower's benefit, which now my mother-in-law is no longer covered by his insurance that she was supposed to carry over once he passed away as a part of this benefit. So this is the spinoff of just all of this going on. And as my wife and I were conversing with her, my wife had more contact with her than I. My wife had told me she would talk over her, tell her she'll get stuff taken care of. Nothing happened. So we ended up going there yesterday, and the owner of the company was there, black female, wonderful. She was great through the whole funeral process, but she's just very busy. Her father also passed away, and she's in the process of completing ownership of his funeral home. So she's always running around. But she was there yesterday. So while she was there, the woman, when she saw my wife, and my wife started to explain what was going on because she was fed up after dealing with this woman for on a few occasions and not getting any resolution and not being able to get in contact with the owner to facilitate it just to get that other woman out of the equation. She was unable to do so. So as she's explaining to the woman, the other woman just jumps in and says, it's all my fault. So everything that she wouldn't admit, where my wife and I were asking her for, to get this clarified, she finally admitted because she was put on the spot in front of the owner of the company. So now they say they're going to have this expedited through somebody they know on the back end. So I'm waiting to find out about that sometime early next week. But just the whole process of this has had my wife and I have to relive this whole grieving process over and over. And it's really, really hard. So it's just interesting because My father-in-law has made his presence known in ways that are incredible, and he hasn't been gone that long. Even with the fact that we never told my mother-in-law that he passed away. We never actually had that conversation because people with Alzheimer's do not do well with death, the concept of death, and they can get stuck in that frame of reference. So we chose collectively not to tell her. Yet, the day of his funeral, she said that he passed away. So he made a way to let her know somehow through her illness that he passed away. And it's something that she understands now without any of us ever bringing it to her attention. When she first said it, my son and I looked at each other like, what is going on here? None of us said anything. How does she know this? So we said, okay, well, he's doing what he has to do. There's other things he's done as well. But in this situation, because it's surrounding the funeral home, and things that have happened that were done incorrectly, that's causing us further grief now because we have to keep reliving, going back over this thing and talking about him passing and all of this craziness. So it's just sad to me. Anti-blackness can really manifest itself in the most crazy situations. This is one I didn't expect. Like I said, we were trying to practice black self-respect by choosing a black funeral home. Like I was also saying, the owner is wonderful. It's just that the person she has in charge, excuse me, is a person that's causing issues. And I have a feeling that maybe it's for the fee. I don't know what, I think the fee is like 20%, 18% of the amount that's owed, which is a few $1,000s. And I don't know if she's skimming that off the top or what's going on because she's been there for 26 years. She worked under the woman's father, and the woman just took over the company, I think, within the last 9 months to a year, and she's still kind of settling her father's estate. So, it's nothing with the woman herself. It's just this particular worker and what she's doing, and the owner is really not aware of what's happening. And my wife and I said we want to have a discussion with her after everything is settled, not to really badmouth the other person, but just like, hey, we don't want any other black people to go through this situation because to relive this is just horrific. So again, I just wanted to say that thanks for listening to my call. I hope I wasn't too long-winded, but again, that's not going to stop me from practicing black self-respect. Again, I'm not going to try and destroy this woman's career, but I'm just hoping that we can facilitate change to better assist other people when you're dealing with something like death. You don't want to have other extraneously stressful things take place that shouldn't be taking place. So thank you all, and I'll mute my line.
Again, my condolences to you and your family, and especially having to deal with all of, at minimum, I would say, the unprofessionalism that you've had to tolerate with all of this, and with some real world costs, financial costs to your family with all of this. I apologize to having to deal with all of that. And the anti-blackness is a serious problem in terms of how we treat each other, in terms of what is acceptable. I think a lot of folks have talked about this even in a workplace context, that we sometimes, because of how we've been trained under white supremacy, that we will work harder and give a better representation of our best effort for white customers, white patrons, as opposed to black people. Hopefully, all of us, we can work on that and just trying to do the best that we can, minimizing the anti-blackness. And even sounds like you did a great job in how you were dealing with all of this to try to get the situation resolved as best we can. But man, the anti-blackness is a major problem. Even when we start talking about black economics, anti-blackness is still a major problem. Do we have other folks who died?
Hey, Gus, I have to thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for interjecting, but I have to thank you because, and I told this to my wife earlier today, it's because of the cows that I really solidified my understanding of anti-blackness, and it gave me an acute ability because I have a background of, running the streets and doing things that affected other black people negatively in my youth and when I was much more confused. So for me, when I really solidified my understanding of anti-blackness, and not even when being mistreated, having a higher level of understanding as to why I'm being mistreated by this person, and the fact that they are in their own world of pain, and somehow because they can't constructively deal with it, which is understandable, the system is not designed for us to do so, and that they're acting out in that moment with me. And it's because of this show that helped me to do so, because my temperament, my attitude, and especially when I was younger, my ability to be physically aggressive when feeling disrespected was just quite palpable. And thankfully, by the time I found this this show. I was older and wiser by then, but my temper's still quite bad if I'm pushed too far. And it was really great for me personally, even in this negative situation, to not go to the extremes of anger about this, because death usually can bring that out of people, and I've seen that before. So I was really glad that I was able to maintain that, and really I owe it to just the understanding of that I've gained from this show, from listening to and being able to converse with Dr. Welsing and other people, Black people who helped to solidify that understanding. So I just have to say thank you again for that, because if it wasn't for this show, I might have been, just it might have been a whole different response, and it wouldn't have been constructive and more positive. So thank you again, Gus, and I'll mute my line. I'm sorry for interjecting.
Oh, appreciate it. Appreciate that for sure. All of us still learning, still trying to do better, hopefully, and particularly with the anti-blackness. I know Dr. Welsing, that was something she all the time encouraged us to try to mitigate as best we can, particularly even in business, because it pops up there quite a bit as well, to just try and do better, try to do the best that we can under this system. I believe during the interim, as Rouse was finishing up his response, I believe Stacy in the UK is with us. Can you hear us, Stacy? Maybe she's... Oh, there she is. There she is. Grand. Good to hear. Stacy in London, I believe. Let's see if I can get my math correct. It's 2:43 a.m. Friday morning. Stacy joining us.
Gus, okay. That's it. That is actually precise. Well
right
done.
Right on. Still learning. We will give her a moment or two to get acclimated, and then she can give us the update on her situation or whatever other input she wants to share with us. Let's see, while we're giving her a second to get kind of settled in, the other folks who dialed in, if we've not heard from you, if you either had suggestions on what you've heard thus far, or you had your own situation you wanted to discuss, feel free.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Gus, to the callers and the listeners. This is a female Black caller from New York. So I just had a couple of things to report. First of all, I just chimed in, and just to let Ross know I am extremely sorry about your loss, and sending you and your family all the best vibes possible. I know you had discussed, illness with your mother-in-law and your family, so I'm really, really saddened to hear about your father-in-law passing. So two things. I had a stay-at-home job, and that was because of I had to take my mom. I'm taking care of my mom, so I have to take her to a lot of medical appointments, and it was a flexible job. So I managed to get terminated from that because I didn't reach the sales quotas, which was cool. I ain't no salesperson, and it was, it was something that, it served its purpose. But the part I'd like to report in about is that after I was terminated, I called in and I said to them, to the HR office, I asked them if I can get a statement letting that stated, my dates of employment, my hiring date, and when my position ended. And I mean, that was like pulling teeth. It was like, I got switched from white person to white person. And finally somebody said, no one's ever asked us for that before. And I thought to myself, wow, what kind of company is this? No one's ever asked us. And then I finally got in touch with the HR person today. Meanwhile, I got terminated on July 10th. So what's today, the 26th, 27th? Yeah, so finally got in touch with the HR person today. And this woman, white woman, you talk about lazy. I mean, you can just hear the lazy through the phone. And that's how most of these people are, and I just looked at the whole system. They created this system to benefit them, and that they run, that they call the shots on. But when they are not invested in running it, but they are invested in making sure we don't benefit from it. That's just been my overall observation, especially with, my last job with the state of New York as a supervisor. My supervisor was just, forget it. She was just like one big, that was a one lazy white woman. So which leads me to my next report. I actually had three. So I'm looking into getting into teaching within the school system in South Carolina. And I had put in an application like over a year ago. So I recently ran into somebody who was able to, follow up on it. And so we're kind of getting the ball rolling in that direction. And funny was that I said, well, what held it up? I said, first of all, no one called me to let me know that, the application had not been processed or, they were waiting for something. And they said, oh, well, we got references. Two of your references came in and they were just fine. I said, well, what was the problem? Well, the third one, which is the first one that we needed, was from your immediate supervisor, this fat white woman who only hangs out with black people. And I think we had a discussion on that a couple of years ago about the psychology and the psychosis behind fat, unattractive white women hanging out only with black people and only having black friends. So, yeah. Now, I had called her when I first put in the application and let her know that this survey was coming in for her to fill out and provide a reference. And she answered me. She said, oh, sure, I'll look for it, but, I'm really busy. So I let it go. And I never follow up on it. So much was going on with my mom or with my son and what have you. Me trying to settle in a new place. I never followed up on it. So, it was like kind of unnerving to hear that, this woman just never did it. But then again, she was pissed off that I left. And I found out that soon after I left, she was transferred somewhere. So I don't know if white people got upset with her because she wasn't keeping a close enough eye on me and knowing that I was going, that I was leaving that job. But anyway, we depend on them for everything, right? So, yeah, that kind of screwed me over with trying to get this position a lot sooner. But we're working through that, so hopefully I'll be able to have some more things to report on workplace racism with my third career that I'm about to start. The next thing I had to report was that a few weeks ago I was saying how I had to take my son to the emergency room and how there was a white person in there who didn't act like he was serious about the entire situation. And anyway, we found a black doctor. I left the emergency room, and we found a black doctor and diagnosed him real quick. I let him know that he was a college student that had to go back up to New York to attend school, and they were very diligent about getting him to a surgeon to take care of this issue. So he had the surgery yesterday, and thank God he came through with flying colors, and he is recovering very well and will be able to go back to school on time. But what I wanted to report was at the hospital, and we talked about this before, and I think there was the firefighter from Florida who concurred. All the staff, the entire team, white. We know, not surprising. White. So, I had to say my Dr. Francis Cress Welsing mantra a few times and be on the lookout, for black people who I could, have some kind of bond with to, look out for me in the situation if I needed it. So his nurse, white woman, had to, let me know that she was a nurse for over 40 years, blah, blah, blah. And, where you guys from? Blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, then she had to let me know that she had been to New York with her daughter, and they had gone into upstate New York to some kind of plantation. Taggy. And that they were from Alabama originally, and I was like, okay, got it. Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions. I totally get it. So that was my experience with them. But everything came out well. So I looked at the packet that I was sent home with, and you're always asked to commend a staff person, So the only black person that had a contact with was the young lady who was wheeling my son out of the surgery, the same-day surgery, making sure that he got into the car and everything. Her name was Valerie. So I am nominating her for the stellar job that she did in taking care of my son, conversating with me, the friendliness she had, letting me know what I could do to prevent anything from happening in the future. And she was just like the highlight rainbow, sunshine, stars, moon of the entire experience. And I am certainly going to put that on paper in the spirit of Dr. Cambon and make that known. So I just wanted to share that with you all, and thank you for listening. Another wonderful conversation we're having, Gus. And I'll mute my line.
Appreciate that. Black female caller in New York. Great news about your son. Hope he continues to heal and recuperate quickly, exponential healing, and we'll be up and back at him, doing great in a matter of hours. That is phenomenal. I know Dr. Cambon would have a huge smile. KamalCambon.org, the website, KamalCambon.org. Definitely something he's recommended, doing exactly what was just illustrated. If you get a black person and they give great service, write them a letter. That can go in their personnel file. That could be the difference in them being terminated or them getting a raise. That could, when we started at the beginning about if you're a black person and you figured out, I get all my promotions, no problems, you writing that letter could help that black person be on that easy path. They can be like, we were about to fire you, but we got this letter that says you did such a tremendous job, and they were just so impressed with your service and commitment to doing well that, I guess we'll give you another chance. I mean, really, that sort of thing could happen. And Dr. Cambon says he does that. If he goes out anywhere, he looks for black employees so he can write that letter handwritten, see if he can help them out on their job situation. The resume, or I guess it's not a resume, where they have to do a letter of recommendation. We talked about that before in terms of black people, seeing if we can even, that seems like something we might be able to assist in. I think you said for this job that they wanted a letter from your direct supervisor, but at least 2 other letters of recommendation. If we can use other black people for those resources, that would be great. Just networking and having other black people who have, and that might even be one where the more competent your skills as a writer are, the better your letter can be. But that's definitely something I would encourage, particularly if you have professional friends who have, some status, some clout, where they can vouch and say some glowing things about your work history and your competence, assets you would provide to a company. Great way that we can try to circumvent racism, white supremacy. Before I get to some of the other folks who dialed in, I want to try and make sure I include the folks who wrote in as well, in case they want commentary. First person that wrote in, person says, listening to the podcast and the conversation regarding the union member, the Puerto Rican leave approved and going to HR. So this was about Thomas in New York last week, where he was saying that it was a quote unquote Puerto Rican person who was in charge of deciding whether or not you got vacation time. And she had been denying it to black people who were born in the U.S. and then giving it to all the other non-white people, giving them vacation. It's no problem. But if you are African American, problem, you don't get your vacation days. And so he said he was just going to take his vacation because he put it in as he was instructed to do, and he was denied. So he was going to take his vacation and then just go to the white people in charge who are in greater authority to go to them with the problem that vacation leave is not being adjudicated in a just manner to all employees. So continuing with the person who wrote in, he said, if Thomas in New York is in a union, which he said he was, everything or nearly everything is governed by the contract between the union and his employer. Leave is almost always clarified in the contract. Most unions have contract books they hand out like candy on Halloween. What the metaphors. Oof. The caller would benefit by reading his contract before speaking to anyone regarding his issue, as it could save him the great embarrassment by showing how ill-informed he is. Also, knowing the contract language could arm him with a rebuttal to the leave denier. If I remember correctly, Thomas in New York did talk extensively about being in the union and how they were not effective in mediating this matter. I think he talked about that extensively in his commentary from last week. I guess he can comment himself about whether or not he checked to see if they have something in the contract in terms of specific information about leave time, whether that's being violated or what the policy is for that particular situation. But I know he did talk extensively about the union aspect last week. See if I can get one more in really quick and then get back to the callers. Okay, this one is sure we can get this one in too. Okay, this is black male. I enjoyed the programs, talking about the program specifically for workplace racism, which focused on the physical and psychological toll being in these toxic workplaces takes from black people. I'm retired now, but learned that black people have to remember to play their cards close to the vest when dealing with racists. Another metaphor. Never ever brag about what you have or what you are doing, and do not post pictures of your expensive vacations and possessions on Facebook. Dr. Cambon would get 2 big smiles in. I saw 2 black males lose their job as a result of this. One of them bragged about his net worth to his black coworkers, and these victims of white supremacy colluded with the white racist managers to cause him to lose his job. The other black worker took his white coworkers to view his new home, and wound up losing his job and being thrown into the street. Years ago, I made the mistake of telling my white managers about a vacation I had taken with my wife, and one of the white managers could not conceal his shock to learn I had stayed in the same 5-star hotel that he and his family stayed at. Also, while I was in this same position, I used to drink green tea instead of coffee like the whites did. My boss intimated that this was gay. I told him if I were gay, I would have his job. Needless to say, this didn't go over very well. I reiterate to blacks working on these jobs, mind your own business, encourage others to do the same, and never brag trying to impress other victims of white supremacy on your job. I would agree completely. I know Mr. Fuller has said many, many times that one of the unfortunate consequences of the system of white supremacy is that many, many black people have been conditioned that is our top priority, or one of our very top priorities, is to impress other victims of racism with what we have, things that, racists have allowed us to accumulate on the plantation. And he says that is just absolutely poisonous in terms of us solving this problem, to get out of that habit immediately. Certainly not on the job. That is, oh my God, one of the worst things you can possibly do. I've said consistently, you do not want to be inviting white people to your house for any circumstances, not white co-workers, colleagues at all. And I mean, this is unfortunate, but just the position that I've taken, I think it's based on logic. Just because a person has a lot of melanin and you all happen to work together does not mean that this is your homie, friend, brother, sister, partner, none of the above. Unfortunate, but that is the system of racism, white supremacy. Like I said, I know a lot of victims of racism. They do try to help out, other black people on the job. Great. Even try to share constructive information about racism on the job. Great. I have seen a number of these situations, unfortunately, because of the system and the pressure racists can apply that just can make it very difficult to be trusting in a work situation. So I would be very, very cautious. That the position I basically take my code, anything that I say to anybody on the job, if I'm talking to you and saying anything, it's like I'm talking to everybody at this company. And if there are any parent or sister organizations on the other side of the planet, I'm talking to them too. They're going to transcribe and translate every word that comes out of my mouth so that everybody hears it. If I'm not willing to say it to everybody, then I keep it to myself. That way, we don't have that problem, and you don't do any bragging, because we don't have anything to brag about as long as white supremacy exists. I wouldn't care what you have. You got a $8 billion spaceship parked outside, and you and Elon Musk are going to ride to Mars. I wouldn't have a word to say about it to anybody, because that has been repeated on this program. In fact, I remember it was a black female caller. She dialed in and said that it was a black male, and he was just talking about getting married, his wedding plans, he and his wife looking forward to it. Her conclusion, this person ended up losing their job. She felt it was white angst directed at this black male, thinking, oh, he's planning this big, nice wedding and he's going to pay for all of this and do that. And they went and terminated him. So I wouldn't even talk about that if you're getting married. So they don't think that you're going to do it up and have some ritzy reception and take a nice honeymoon. I wouldn't tell them nothing. I'm broke and struggling. I'm trying to borrow money to get sardines for dinner, and leave it at that. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have commentary on what the folks wrote in, if you have your own situation, if you have a hand up, line should be open. Anybody that we missed completely, you should go ahead and speak now.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
All right. Greetings, Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. A couple of things that I wanted to do was just black self-respect to Roz, to Emmy and Red in Ohio.
and also the black mom in Ohio. Roz, condolences to yourself and your family through this time. And I wanted to give a few suggestions for Emmy's situation. One in particular is that in her space, I don't know if she can keep like a cup, like I guess like a cup of tea. My suggestion would be that they have some cups that you can purchase that will maintain heat for a long period of time. I would suggest keeping like a hot liquid inside of a cup, and that way you can use that to throw in the face of a race soldier that comes up and does anything physical, just to kind of keep them away. Also, the other thing is that I took they had a class at my place of work, and it was against active shooters, and so it's basically giving strategies to use against active shooters. One of the things they mention is that oftentimes in these cases, the studies that they've done, when an active shooter enters a building or an office space or what have you, is that most people would try to run, or most people would be in open space. Or but one of the suggestions that they gave is that you basically pick up everything that you can around you and throw it at the person who has the gun and maybe pointing the gun. So I think that may be a constructive tactic to use. The other thing is that I think it was Red in Ohio, who mentioned her manager, who basically came in and said one thing and began to do another. If I can employ a metaphor here, I see it as if, what races are like magicians, or very refined races anyway, are like magicians, how they would first show their hands to show that there's nothing in their hands, and then immediately they all of a sudden pull something out that was already there the whole time. So I would be very careful about them mentioning the first thing that they say that they won't do will probably be the first thing they will do. Not in every case, but in my experience, I've seen that happen. Let's see. I think that was everything with my notes for now. I also wanted to provide an update a little bit later on as I gather my notes for my situation. I called in last week about the verbal warning and not signing the document. But I'll mute my line for now. Thank you.
Great. Definitely appreciate the updates. Those verbal warnings, that can be a lot of trouble. So I certainly will be looking forward to hearing that. Stacy, did you need a little bit more time to get settled in, or did you want to share?
Yeah, hi Gus. I'd like to just like the last caller, condolences to Roz, and I hope I think it's the caller in the DMV, I hope her son gets better soon. And it was good to hear a story about praising the female who was helping to take care of her son, because actually I think sometimes we get caught up in a lot of the negativity that we encounter, and it is good to just have those reminders and ways in which we can help others out. And I know from personal experience, I won't go into the detail of the whole sort of situation, I'll do that another time, but I know that I was on the receiving end of somebody writing in praising me for the support I gave them on a particular project, and it was an external person, and at the time it was at the start of a lot of attacks that I was receiving at work, and my head of team and other people colluding. And when this senior external person wrote in, it was unexpected. I certainly didn't prompt it, and she copied in my head of team. And I do believe that stopped a lot of things that would have at that time been escalated against me. And I mean, it didn't stop the campaign in the long run, but, it can affect people positively. So, yeah, I sometimes we take for granted, because I don't think when she was writing in to compliment and praise me for the support I gave her, she certainly didn't know I was under attack. So, it's just sometimes these things can come out of the blue and be really supportive. So I just wanted to echo your point. I did hear the beginning of MA's commentary, and then I didn't hear the tail end of it. But I understand that she's now been moved, and I don't know. I think because I got caught up with my own situation. I mean, I wanted to say a couple of programs ago, I was actually quite concerned because it seemed to be escalating anyway, and this was before the sort of lunatic with the gun. And it's just really concerning that her employers were not supporting her effectively. So I think at the start of the program, Gus, you did talk about, at what point do we make the decision to leave? And obviously it sounds like her financial attachment isn't so great that she can move on anyway. But, whether it's that high level of danger or the sort of physical attacks that I've been receiving, which are nowhere near anything that she's encountering, these things do have an effect on us. And I've always been worried about the unseen effect that some of the stress that I'm encountering has on me. And we've had, examples of that, Dr. Frances Cress Wilson and the stress that she was under, Gwen Ifill or Nita McLean, and we just take these things for granted, really. So, I don't know if I necessarily have an answer to that, but I just think that, we do need to make the decision, and if it's easier to move on, then go, because sometimes it's just not worth the fight. A quick update on my situation. I'm intending to go to the police this weekend, as I said this on the last program. I'm going to do things in my own time, so I intend to do that this weekend. I haven't submitted the paperwork for my grievance check. HR was asking me about it this week, and I will respond to them tomorrow. But I think they're keen to give the other parties a sort of timeline. And I thought to myself, I'm not in any rush to put them at ease or to think about how they might be feeling in this situation. They certainly weren't considering my feelings, so I'm not going to spend too much time being concerned about them. But one thing I did want to talk about was some of the wider racism that goes on in my workplace. And there's a group director who has recently been appointed. He's probably been in post for about a year now. Gus, there's something happening in the background, and I'm just conscious it's actually causing a lot of noise. So I'm gonna mute my line and come back in a few minutes while I just sort that out.
Oh, right on. Yes, ma'am. Appreciate that. Stacy in London will get the update from her in a second or two. We had another person who wrote in. I'll take the time to share, and then for other callers, if they have commentary they would like to share, feel free. I do think that's important, that stress that is not seen. I mean, with any situation, it's flagrant, it's acute, but I mean, just the daily, when it's daily abuses, them asking you the same question 50,000 times, or them making up little nicknames. I told you all, Chantel said she was dealing with that situation where they were making up nicknames for both her and another non-white coworker. The white people, when they were not around, they would, find little things to call them. This stuff does take a toll on you. When you're thinking about it, when you're not at work, when you're upset about it, on the job, it does take a toll. And that's why I keep saying very important that we replenish, number one, and then try to be preemptive, even in expecting this, so that we can minimize the toll that it takes, so that it's metaphors aplenty, so that we're not being smacked in the face anew each time that we deal with these type of incidents, that we already expect these types of behaviors. We work with racists. They're doing what racists do. Dogs bark, birds chirp. The other person wrote in, maybe someone here can help me with this. This is a black female. White supremacy is really doing its job, as I'm super confused as to what sexual harassment is in the workplace, technically, or in general what it is. Every morning there are a few white males in my face and personal space, even though I let it be known I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. One example is this older white man who will follow me into the elevator on days we arrive at the same time. We get off at different spots. When it's time for him to get off, he gets close to my face and says, "Have a good morning." The most recent morning, I had to tell him to back up. We don't work for the same company, only the same building. This is something I feel white males get away with a lot because many people don't know what constitutes as sexual harassment, including me. None of the black males or Hispanic males I encounter do this. They are very respectful, even when showing hints that they may like me. When mentioning this to other coworkers, other non-white people, they just brush it off as white men don't know any better, or they don't know how to act around black women, which doesn't make any sense. I'm a human being. Please help. She has another portion, but just my thoughts. I would not ride the elevator with this person at all. As soon as I'm coming, I would skim. We talked about being alert before. I would totally minimize any opportunity, especially if this person, not like this is a coworker of mine. This is just some random race soldier who happens to be on the elevator with me. We would not be on the elevator anymore at all. As soon as I looked and it looked like he was in the vicinity, I would wait. I would not ride the elevator. I would let him get on, and then once he's on, then I would go and catch the elevator. I would catch the next one. If it looked like he might get on, I would get off and just wait and catch the next one. And if that caused any problems, I would tell them this person has consistently violated my space and made me feel extremely unsafe and uncomfortable while riding the elevator trying to get to work. I have told him to stay away, and he continues to get very close to me. I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. I'm a female. He's a male. He's larger than me, and it's just not safe. And if anyone has any further issues, fine, you can go from there, but that should squash it. But I would not give him any opportunities at all to be in my space. And I might, if they have security, depending on the type of building this is, I might even notify them that this has been a problem. Start that paper trail if he's doing this to other non-white females or anyone, period, in the building, that this guy has been a problem. He's been molesting you on the elevator repeatedly, even after you've said something. But I would nip that immediately. I would make it really firm. And this might be another one where you have as soon as you see him, you have your mace or your hot liquid or whatever, you have it at the ready, because this is just not going to be anything to play with. Continuing to read. My actual workplace racism is my white female boss. She knows I complete my work within mere hours of it being received, but she still reprimands me because I don't complete it fast enough. My white male coworker, who comes in 30 minutes before opening so he has time to actually complete his work, takes weeks to finish his assignments. Instead of telling him to move faster, she just goes to his desk and takes his unfinished work and piles it on my desk. My other white coworker keeps looking for ways to get me in trouble because he does not want to do his work. He sent a broadcast passive-aggressive email about an assignment I was working on, which was full of lies. He complained and stated a third-party company called and stated I did not fill out the paperwork right. Everyone knows this company doesn't call anyone, and if they did, the call would come to me first. Also, my paperwork was filled out completely and directions were followed exactly. He created this big lie simply because he doesn't want to do any work. This might be one where I would request an inquiry. I've said before, anytime there are allegations, I think we talked about this with Stacy before. I think Emmy even requested a written retraction. This might be another instance where you want a written retraction. If we're going to have some sort of complaint submitted that I'm not doing my work correctly or that I'm making errors, I would like this fully investigated. And if it turns out that this is false, I want a written retraction because I do not want my reputation besmudged by false accusations that I'm doing shoddy work here. I value working for this company and doing great work. If I'm doing great work, then I do not want that wrongly disparaged by some, fabricated account that I'm, in here gold bricking and just doing sloppy work. So that might be another one to say, hey, I would like to request and in writing request, and particularly since this is going out on email to lots of different folks. I mean, come on, formal inquiry. And I would even request, is this proper procedure? This might be another one just for basic manual. What is the procedure if there is a perceived complaint or allegation that something is not being done in the correct manner, is this the way the problem is supposed to be solved, where we send out site-wide emails that, you know, someone reported that this is not correct or that's not correct? Is this the proper protocol? Is this how we handle any allegation of wrongdoing, or is there a different procedure? Just making sure that we're all on the same page, as they say, with what the policy and procedure is, what our decorum is going to be at this place of employment. Those would be at least two initial thoughts in terms of how I would address this report of wrongdoing. Did folks have any suggestions for these two? So we got the elevator harassment from someone who does not work in the same company. And then we got white people, I guess the standard white people not doing their job, and so they will come and fuss at her, or then white people just finding ways to get her in trouble. It seems, making up things that she's doing work wrong and that sort of thing. Suggestions for these? Kind of seems like two separate incidents.
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
With the elevator incident, you are very correct. Make it as expedient as possible, and make it obvious that you are not going to no longer get on the elevator if you see that person is on the elevator. It may be some case where it's crowded full of people. I can see, you know, getting away with getting on the same elevator, but then again, you know, make it a total policy, no matter what. Just don't get on the elevator with the person at all. And it'll make it quite obvious. You have to do that immediately to let it be known that you would no longer have any type of irrelevant contact with that person. Yeah. That's my thoughts.
Any other suggestions for the person who wrote in either situation?
Hi, Gus.
Stacy from London back with us. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, I agree with the firefighter. I think that was a firefighter in terms of the last situation. And I think people already know my stance about allegations and just the inappropriateness of the way that was handled as well. It sounds like bullying and harassment to me anyway. But yeah, I don't leave it because as HR recently said to me in terms of my situation, sometimes we hesitate, but these people are doing what they're doing to you regardless, and their intentions are clear when they're doing it. You know, take it lightly, particularly when it's an allegation and they're criticising your performance, because they usually had things.
All right. Were you done, Stacy? Oh, I don't know if we lost Stacy. Are you still with us, Stacy? How interesting. I'm not hearing Stacy. Hopefully she's still with us. Hopefully we didn't lose her. But yeah, I take those allegations seriously. I've said that for years. Take the allegations of any sort of wrongdoing or that you messed something up. Take that real serious, because it's been my experience that they will let those allegations linger. And even if it's just a rumor, that they have a way of they will stick with you, where it'll be this rumor that you messed this up or you did that for years. And so that'll be the justification for not taking you seriously for anything. Raise, promotion, nothing. Oh, you know, Susan, she messed that account up back then, cost us millions of dollars. And they'll just add, oh man, still messing. Oh, okay. I think Stacy got disconnected. I'll dial it back. But yeah, will be the sort of thing that just becomes a rumor attached to you, where you aren't to be taken seriously, and we should kind of think of you as an incompetent employee in some way, shape, or form. I would take that sort of thing very, very seriously, and it sets a tone that, hey, I'm not here to play around. I take my reputation and performance, my job, very seriously. And I take any sort of allegations that I have messed up something. I've taken that very seriously. And if there is an allegation, even if I did do something incorrect, well, then we should follow due process if I have done something incorrectly. Got disconnected. My apologies. I will add Stacy back. But yeah, just take it seriously. I would recommend a retraction if folks are going to be serious about accusing you of anything. And as I was saying right when I got disconnected, that it sends a message to racists that you are about due process and that you are not just going to idly accept any sort of charge that you've done something wrong on the job. I think that's also very, very important. Let's see. Did other folks have commentary that they wanted to share? I'm going to add Stacy back to the line as well. Did other suggestions for the elevator aspect of this, or the, I guess, white people not doing their job and making false allegations?
Can I be heard?
Yes, heard both of you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Greetings, guys. Greetings to callers listening. Just the voice. I didn't have commentary for that, but I had my own personal observation that I wanted to say.
Let's see if we could go in order, because I'll make sure we include you. Can we get all the suggestions in for the person that wrote in first, and then I'll circle back and get you the voice. Thank you for your patience, sir. Do we have any other suggestions for the female caller with her two situations? Anybody else have suggestions for her? Maybe other folks did not have suggestions for her. Maybe that's the case.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
So I got blanked out for a minute. I don't know if this was said or not, with regard to her working with the white people who were screwing up for work. You know, we always document stuff, and that would be my only suggestion. That every time she does something, diligently keep a record of it. Record of what she does. Send me that. Follow up on it. If there's anything that's not completed, you should have the email, and she should always see her supervisor, and also ask is there anything that I'm missing? I hope this is okay. Ask the question at the end. Is this satisfactory to everyone? Always ask, always document exactly what she did, who she's sending it to, and CC, everybody who is involved, who could be involved, who is not involved, might screwing it up, just so she has a good record of it, so that if anybody back later on and tries to blame her for anything, she has a good record of it. I mean, that's what I always do. And I always ask a question at the end and say something, what is satisfactory? Have to solve the issue, and anything else that I need to do. That's just my only suggestion. I'll get my line.
Big fan of being able to ask questions in these type of situations too, particularly when there's any sort of allegation that you've done something wrong, taking it very seriously, and you want to ask a lot of questions and make sure that they answer your question in detail. That can be a great one to use email as well. That way you're generating electronic record of who's responding, who's answering your inquiries, that sort of thing. Any other suggestions? If not, we can get the voice. I'll ring Stacy back as well. Do we have any other suggestions for the person who wrote in? Assume folks are good for the moment. Again, anything where you are feeling as though you are, where it's becoming something where they're touching you physically, where you're feeling uncomfortable, this could be any form of sexual harassment. You got to make it flagrant, and I would do everything I can to really cut down and minimize the opportunity for that person to have a chance to mistreat you in any way, shape, or form. If this is, once it's got to the point where you don't feel comfortable and you feel like, hey, this person is encroaching on my personal space, and might even feel like they're going to put their hands on me in some way that I don't like, man, they cannot have any opportunity at all. We can't be in the same room, same nothing. The voice, did you want to give your commentary?
Yes, thanks, Gus. I just wanted to, let everybody know about my observations that I've recently viewed at the workplace. As you know, I'm a delivery driver now. I drive trucks, but my area is in West Palm, and we have another driver who's in like Stewart / Fort Pierce area. So that would be like another, I would say another hour and a half north of my area. So in my area, my territory, I take care of things. You know, I'm pretty good for what I do since my training and, you know, how the guy who hired me, white guy who hired me, you know, the way he set me up and everything like that. And then he saw how I was doing and he loves how I operate. Now, like I say, I don't try to really get into anybody's business when I'm on the job. I notice a lot of times this guy, he likes to talk a lot. Like my boss, he really likes to talk a lot. So anytime he asks me a question, I counter it with another question just to throw him off. And it's not a question that's on the topic of what he tells me. It's just something that might just come out the blue. And I'll just ask him that question, and it always throws him off anytime he tries to get information from me. So I know one day he was talking to me, and we were, I was supposed to meet up with him, and he didn't get to the destination where I was supposed to meet up with him at in that time frame. So I'm calling him like, you know, trying to figure out where is he. Finally, when he calls me back, he says, I had an emergency. I said, oh, okay. He says, you know, the driver that's north of you, we had some serious issues going on in his area. So he was telling me that, you know, we're drivers, we drop off when it's a big delivery, we just drop to the store and we go. But if it's a small store, then we have to be the ones to not also deliver it, but also to work it out on the shelf. Now, there are items that we deal with, you know, they have expiration dates on it. So the driver up north, he's a white driver. And what's been going on is he's just been packing out these small stores and not rotating properly. So this account is a major account that we have up here. And they are, like all the jobs that's in Florida now, they have this system. Majority of the jobs, they're going with this system if you're dealing with any type of food or anything like that, where they have a code and they'll go by the dates. They'll have somebody check all the dates in the store. And if you have out of dates in your store, they don't even contact the supervisors anymore. They just send it straight up to corporate. So this white driver has been getting a lot of corporate complaints, and this is a new account. So it doesn't look good on my boss. And he's frustrated to the point where he's trying to get rid of him. But the thing that is funny to me is every time I say to him, like when I see him, I say, did you get rid of the guy yet? No. Then one day he says, you know, he's such a good guy. He's so clean. He's so pleasant. You know, he was just giving them all these, like, great compliments. And I'm like, in my head, like, if this was a black guy, if this was me, and I did that and I had got all those emails from corporate to the point where they're threatening my boss to take away that area from him if he doesn't replace his driver or get this situation under control. And I'm telling him, I'm like, you're going to lose your job for a guy that you're admiring like that? And that's your money? And he's like, no, you know, I'm going to get rid of him, you know, because I'm not going to lose that territory. I get rid of a driver before I lose that territory. But it was just mind-boggling to me that this guy would just hold on to him because he was white. And it just goes to show you, like that. I brought it up because of the caller that called in earlier about how they get so many chances and we don't. And I've witnessed it. To this day, I asked him about it the other day, and he kind of like brushed me off. But I think this guy is still working with the company. And then what happened is there's a mutual, a manager at one of the stores that knows my boss. So I tried to backhand and go through him because me and him, you know, I keep a relationship. Like I say, I always keep a relationship with them. to figure out, what's going on. And he ended up telling me, he said, yeah, he still has them up there. And I'm like, wow. And he didn't even want to tell me that. So I was like, wow, that's crazy. So that was that. The second one that I wanted to talk about was I was in one of the stores and I noticed that one of the black workers, they were going under some terroristic type behavior. One of the managers, I know I was by there waiting for one of the managers to check in my delivery, and I overheard a slick comment that the manager said to the black person. He was saying the black person just went away from their station for like 5 seconds. It was really that long. And they just went to the a part of their station that was out of their section a little bit, just so that they can, grab something real quick and bring it back to their station. And he's waiting, and he's like, "Oh, I had to do this, it's not my job, but I just did it for you anyways." And I'm like, and the black person is looking like confused, like what? And so I communicated with the black person, and I said, "Hey, do you have time to just punch out for 5-10 minutes to take a break real quick?" And they was like, "Oh yeah, I could do that." So I went out back with them, and I was talking to them, and I said, "Do you get terrorized like this on a frequent basis?" They're like, "Yeah, man, this guy is he's very sarcastic, but it's like a racial sarcasm, and it's really irking and getting on my nerves." And I was talking to him, and I said, they do that on purpose in order for you to get a reaction. Once they get a reaction the way they want, then they can go ahead and terminate you. So you have to be more codified. And they were like, "Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I noticed that, and I really been trying to hold my cool." So I told them, I said, "Do you have a work journal?" And they was like, "I never thought about having a work journal." I said, "Wherever you go, whatever job you get to, carry a work journal. Write everything that you can write down." I said, "Let's say you go into the bathroom, take a little bathroom break. You don't have to write out the whole incident. Just write the time, the date, and just have a general statement like, disrespected at the register by manager. And then when you go home, you can do a detailed report." I say you can also do, your job at gmail.com and just write an email to yourself and send it. Because emails you could take with you anywhere. And they were like, "That's a great idea." They said, "Oh, you know what? I'll just bring a notepad and I can write it down and I'll put it in my apron." And I said, "No, don't do that. Because guess what? I don't care how much of a person that you're organized. In this job, you could be pulled at any moment and forget things." And they were like, "Yeah, you're right." Because I said, the worst thing you want to do is write down this information and you leave your apron or your book somewhere and they find that out. And they were like, "Yeah, that's a good point. I appreciate it." So, we part ways, and I just wanted to make sure that they were on the right path and protecting themselves in that situation. And that's all I have to say and I'll mute my line. Thanks.
Great suggestions. I was thinking about that today and just making sure that we do not allow ourselves to get really upset and how we respond if, you get terrorized on the job. So just keep that in mind. A lot of times I mentioned that before, that they want us to retaliate. And then they can take whatever punitive action that they want to when we get emotion. I put that in all the descriptions for workplace racism. A part of this broadcast is making sure that we remember and successfully demonstrate our control of emotions while we're at work. We cannot allow these white people to get our emotions riled up and just have us, as they say, flying off the handle because they have said something to us that we did not appreciate. Big part of what they do on the job. But great, I said that a lot of black people that call in, they make that effort on the job to share information with other non-white people that they work with, try to share constructive information, even talk about racism directly. A lot of people do that often, right? Not all, but a good number. Let's see if we can add Stacy back to the line. I know we were having some difficulties with her line previously. She's back with us if she wants to finish up with her report. Stacy in London, are you back with us, ma'am?
Hi, Gus.
Grand. Good to have you back with us. Sorry for the difficulties for the broadcast today. We have about 20 minutes left in the broadcast. Did you want to make sure you're able to finish up? I know we got disrupted earlier when you were attempting to share. Did you want to try and pick back up to continue?
Yeah, and just to apologize, I have a pet cat, and she was playing in the background, and that reminded me of another workplace incident, and it related to one of the earlier points today about not letting race soldiers know what you purchase. I bought her probably in about 2014 as a kitten, and I didn't have any pets for a long time, since childhood, and I bought her mainly for my daughter. And I remember talking about her at work because she was a kitten, and when we were younger and we used to have pets, my parents clearly used to do all the sort of work related to keeping a pet and taking them to the vets and stuff. So I had no idea just how much attention a kitten would require, or I couldn't remember, put it that way. And I just remember mentioning it at work, and innocently, sometimes as we do, we forget. And she's also part Siamese as the breed, and I remember looking them up, and they're actually one of the most the attentions, they require quite a high degree of attention, which I didn't know, because I just, I bought her because she was cute, no other reason than that. And I remember having a conversation at work, and a race soldier responding to me saying, well, that will teach you for buying such a posh cat. And I was absolutely stunned. Not least because she's not even a pure breed, but obviously I didn't explain it because I didn't see the need to. But even in the most, sort of just mundane conversations, that what you never take for granted that race soldiers are counting your finances and taking account of your lifestyle, even to the extent where the apparent breed of my cat is something for discussion. And just crazy. But anyway, in terms of my updates this week, there was a group director who started about a year ago, and I mentioned him. I mentioned recently that he's been asking me to get involved in various projects. Now, this is a non-white male, and he has he's been educated at Oxford. So in terms of how that would, I'm sure you've heard of Oxford University over there, but it's in the league of the sort of Harvard University, so it's not just an everyday university. And as a black male in his early 50s, certainly whenever he was going through education, it certainly wasn't common to have people from non-white backgrounds in those types of institutions, and they certainly weren't going to allow people in just for the sheer fun of it, and they still don't. He's also has a legal background. He's not a solicitor. He is a lawyer, but he's also on the one of the most senior legal roles that you can have. And I won't go into too much detail, but that's just to say he's, very accomplished individual. And he's been involved in a lot of high-profile international cases, and some of them, again, if I mentioned, you would know about. And the reason why I mention his credentials, because for the past year, I have watched white terrorists in the organisation go out of their way to undermine this man in so many ways. And he's obviously not somebody who they can manipulate. And so, I'm sure even if he was somebody they could manipulate, they would still try and undermine him. But he's obviously somebody who doesn't, he's far too uppity, and he's not going to be used, and he is quite close to the chief exec. So over the last year, as I said, I've just been in meetings, and I don't know why, because I shouldn't be surprised, but the comments that get made about him in a very open, casual, but strategic way to denigrate this man's ability, his performance in the role, comments about whether or not he should even stay because, he's not really up to it. And this is just white terrorists in just pretty much every meeting that I've been in for a year, there will be some kind of comment about this man's performance. And it's actually mainly women as well. In fact, it's been all women who have, white racist females who have been leading the campaign to get this man removed, quite frankly, from the organisation. And today I was actually quite annoyed because I sat in a meeting. I didn't lose my temper, but I had to go and speak to somebody, another black female in the organisation, just to literally de-stress, because the way that they talk about this man, and it was literally even referring to him as being quite articulate. He is, as I said, Oxford educated. He's in the legal profession, or his background is in the legal illegal. So he has a legal background. So it's highly likely that he would be articulate. But it just compares to the Barack Obama and all the other times that we've talked about the fact that it doesn't matter what your background is, they will find a way to undermine you and discredit you. And these are people who just wouldn't even compare to him in any way, shape or form in terms of his background. But the interesting thing for me has been the fact that they are so casual in the way that they talk about him. And so I, as a black person in these meetings, they don't necessarily make openly racist comments. They're not calling him a nigger. They're not referring to his colour. It's not that kind of blatant racism. It's the subtlety. It's taken him 3 weeks to sign off an email. Well, that's not unusual in our organisation. And if he takes 3 weeks to sign off an email, maybe that's because the quality of the content of the email that they wanted him to sign off on, as in something that needs to go out to external parties, he's not like the quality of the email that has been sent through for him to sign off. So why would he sign it off? So it's not. He's obviously critiquing their work and not happy with the standard. So they will talk about him openly in meetings, and it's just been eye-opening, and it's being party to what obviously goes on about all black staff in the organisation. I don't think there are any exceptions, but I'm just surprised at how willing these individuals are to do it openly. And that is an insight into the terrorist campaigns that they usually wage about us behind our backs. So yeah, it's been quite, I don't know, today I just found it really trying, but it's also, as I said to somebody this morning, as much as it did upset me, I'm quite glad, because I know we don't imagine these things, and it's interesting to just get to see firsthand the tactics, frankly, led by racist white females in the organisation, to remove a black member of staff, a black senior member of staff out the door. They haven't succeeded, and he's quite adept at dealing with these individuals. So, succeeding, but it clearly isn't stopping them from trying. Gus, I'll mute my line there because I'm conscious other people might have updates that they want to share.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. I think that's Mr. Steele.
Yep, this is Ken Steele, and I am reporting from Chino, California. And I just wanted to say that, one thing that everybody should be aware of is this character that exists in the corporate, the corporate world, the cubicle world, and I'm sure it exists in other types of employment as well. But a number of these suspected racists on these jobs, when they are working these jobs, they are under the influence of a whole cocktail of drugs. Oftentimes, they will be taking amphetamines. This includes Vyvanse, Adderall, Ritalin, any sort of focus meds that they take. That's something that a number of them take. And one way that I can tell that somebody is using these substances is that they will talk very, very fast. Oftentimes, people using these substances will talk at a blistering pace. And I encountered one such person recently in a workplace type setting. I was meeting with this person for a lunch meeting, and even just the casual setting of meeting with this person during lunch was just headache inducing. This person, they were just talking extremely fast. Their eyes were kind of darting around. They were very focused on the subject that we were discussing, but the topic just went on and on with this person. And these people are operating, all over the workplace environment, all throughout the day. You may be wondering how they can get through all of these meetings, how they can, have all these conversations and somehow still be on. How can they be, at these, number of happy hour functions and still get up for work and be on? And yeah, they're on a cocktail of drugs. Not only are they on amphetamines, they can also be on antidepressants. That's another drug that drastically affects their behavior and their mood. And just knowing that these people are on these substances, if you kind of clue that in to the way that they're behaving or the kind of interactions that you're having with them, then you can go ahead and kind of tailor your behavior with that knowledge. Some of these people are hopped up on all sorts of narcotics while they're on the job. Don't take it personally if they're acting very strange. That's because they are under the influence of a number of substances. Myself, I just don't operate well with people that are operating at that frequency. And, one thing that I noted was after that meeting, my whole entire self, I don't know, I felt like a piece of myself was missing, like that, and it was aggressively taken from me. And just being in that type of environment is just so toxic. And being in that environment surrounded by that type of person all the time can be incredibly chaotic and catastrophic to your health. So, just be mindful that, oftentimes when you may have these overbearing managers or something like that, they may be very well be on drugs, and their state can affect your state. And oftentimes, the best solution is to find another place of employment. And I guess I'll mute my line from there.
Drugged white people, major problem worldwide. We have less than 10 minutes left. Did folks have any final comments, observations, suggestions that they wanted to get in? Do we have any folks who actively work in an environment where where you have like coworkers that are armed? Does anyone here currently work in an environment where your fellow employees are able to have a firearm, and how does that impact your counter-racist code when you have to function in that sort of environment? Do we have anybody who's in that type of situation?
I worked in an environment where people openly discuss handgun ownership and use, and I have to suspect that some of those people were concealed carry permit holders, and I do not recall reading any sort of policy at that company at that time stating that there was a no, firearms policy. And in fact, the attitude towards guns was so casual that they would repeatedly leave handgun magazines about handguns, leave them on the counter and at their desk. So, I don't know. I felt like that could have been a possibility, but I didn't know for sure. And I suspect that other people are in a similar situation.
Do we have anyone who's currently working someplace where people are authorized to be armed, or we don't have anyone in that type of situation presently?
Hi, Gus.
Yes, ma'am.
The building that I work in, I mean, the UK laws are very different, as you know, so we don't have police openly carrying weapons unless it's a sort of, I guess around the Queen or something like that. And
Mark Duggan type situation.
And then those sort of where there are situations, but it isn't even then standard for a police to be on the streets every day with guns, unless it's a high security situation. And the building I work in is high security anyway. But our chief exec is somebody who gets a lot of threats against his life. It's not I don't think it's talked about openly in the organisation, but there are people who there are in fact plainclothes police in the building carrying guns. I don't think every member of staff is supposed to know. I got told by one of the PAs. And then you can actually notice them coming in and out if your eyes are trained, if you see what I mean, because you know that they're there, but they're coming in and out with guns, and it's really unsettling actually. And in as much as I work in a nice area and it is a nice building, it goes back to the earlier points about, sometimes we do really have to think about sometimes where we work and why we work there, especially where in the UK the terrorists attacks appear to be increasing. So sometimes it does really make me wonder why I work in the building I do. But we're not really supposed to know that there are armed police roaming around the building either, and I don't think many staff are aware of it. I'll mute my line.
Wow.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I wanted to see if I could squeeze in just a follow-up here for what took place last week with the verbal warning. Okay. So I guess the first thing I wanted to do is that mention that I called into workplace racism some months back, and I mentioned how, in an attempt to be more codified, what I was doing was that I was being more quiet, and I was asking questions rather than making statements. And I had a one-on-one meeting with my manager where he mentioned that, I was quiet. He didn't know how to read me and how that made him nervous. So I began to just kind of keep in mind that there were certain things that were taking place over the following months, certain actions that he was doing, and it seems as if he was doing those things to try and get a response from me. So I would be, very business like in terms of me not mentioning anything outside of something that's business related. I didn't carry on in small talk and other conversations about, personal matters and things of that nature. So over the course of time, I noticed that in our one-on-ones, what he did is I viewed him to have, I guess, if you will, what I would call a white savior complex, or it's more so of a consumptive need. Going back to the delectable Negro and the narcissist supply. One of the things that he did, and I'll try to be succinct here, one of the things that he did was that after making that statement that he didn't know how to read me, and I made him nervous because he didn't know how to read me, he later sent out an email to the entire team with my stats in particular, and he used that as an example of what not to do. It wasn't anything that he talked to me about prior, or we didn't have a conversation about, is this okay if I do this? And excuse me. And then here's the reason for it. So I never seen him do that with anyone else. Also, one thing that he did was that another thing that he did rather, he went on a vacation, and when he came back, he brought back souvenirs. And I didn't know if he brought back souvenirs for everyone else or not. But the souvenir that he left on my desk was a shot glass. And I never talked to him about, drinking. I didn't, again, I don't mention anything about my social activities or anything else outside of the workplace. Another thing that he did was he suggested me for a project. And one of the criteria for the project is that, or to be chosen for the project, is that your performance has to be in good standing. And your metrics have to be at or above goal. When he attempted to, I guess, talk to me about an area where I wasn't doing well, one of the things that I did, and I would recommend it, if for those who work in an environment that is where they calculate your performance using metrics, it may be an average of something over a period of time. What I did was I put together an Excel spreadsheet. I was able to gather pieces and parts of what the calculation was, and then I just looked between, Google and YouTube to try and fill in the gaps to get an actual calculation, because that's not something that was provided. And no matter how many times I asked, I would never get it in full detail. It would always be, a piece of it, or saying that, you just need to change your behavior, but nothing specific, because I was always asking for more training on what I didn't understand. So he also went around and asked other employees about my personal life, trying to get more information on me, and I remember in one of our meetings, he mentioned that I was, cool as a cucumber, and that it's hard to get a response out of me, whatever that means. So then, now we get to this whole thing. I took a test that is not necessary for my job, but it is necessary to move forward. And that can only be done, again, that's something that's allowed, or a privilege, if you will, that's given to people who have the performance of the par. After the exam, then that's when this verbal warning came into place. So with the verbal warning, of course, I didn't sign. I want to also thank everyone for the suggestions that they gave about not signing the document. I did not sign the document. And then that Friday, when I went into work, I shared with him that, I still wasn't comfortable signing the document. He was a little puzzled as to why. I said I still had some questions. And so then he said, well, would you like to talk to my manager about it? And he said, well, I'll check to see if he has some time, and then we can go in there and discuss it with him. One of the moves that he tried to make, and this was probably about an hour later, he wanted me to email him my questions so that he could address them fully. I saw that as being a strategy, and so I responded saying that, I didn't have anything prepared right away, but I would attempt to do it in between work. So then that way I could buy a little more time, because I wanted to address the policy specifically. So we ended up going to the office, to his manager's office. And what took place is that immediately, and one thing I learned from listening to the cows is the importance of words, and also listening to Mr. Fuller, is the importance of words. And I was speaking specifically about the policy and the way that the document was written up. It was inaccurate, and I wanted to ensure that everything was done just and correctly. For some reason, well, I know for what reason, but they kept using the term fair. One of the things that the supervisor mentioned was that, I'm as fair can be. However, they proceeded to kind of play like a, if you will, good cop, bad cop kind of role, where it almost just the tone and the words that were used were very, I would say they could be seen as aggressive. And I was a little bit intimidated. I was taken aback. So instead of us talking about the policy, his manager said, "What time does your shift start?" And we have a major problem if you don't know what time your shift starts. But I didn't have a question about that. My question was about the policy, because the policy allows a little bit of leeway for instances that may take place, and then also the discrepancy that I had a question on in the policy is what constitutes an occurrence. Because in order for it to be an occurrence, according to the policy, it has to be three instances with a certain amount of minutes in 1 month in order for it to represent a pattern. There is some discretion, but from my understanding, it's not discretion in terms of it's a limit on that discretion. So ended up leaving the office. I still didn't sign the document, and they turned it all around toward the end of that meeting, which took probably about an hour, stating how they were there for me. They really wanted to see me succeed. And at this time, I'm just, puzzled by the aggression, and then to turn around and be, we're family.
60 seconds.
So, however, I'm sorry, 60 seconds. Okay, so, however, the portion that my manager was saying that he would add to my verbal warning, he recanted on that because he said it was statistically impossible to do that, even though he threatened to add that to it. And then the following week, Monday, they had me to meet with a black manager who was trying to get a feel for where I was and if I understood everything. Well, come to find out, no one actually, my manager's manager and the black manager, victim of racism, neither one of them read the document. So they didn't see what it actually said. I tried to do a move where I reached out to HR, and I guess I'll just kind of stop there and follow up on the next episode. Thank you. I'll mute my line.
Appreciate that. Wow. Importance of words and doing things in a just due process. Mentioned that before. Mr. Fuller talks about that all the time, particularly in the context of workplace racism. Due process. That's why I said earlier, even if I did do something incorrect, there's supposed to be a correct procedure that might involve people actually reading the documents that talk about what it is I allegedly did wrong. And or I think, as was mentioned earlier with some of this stuff where they come out with all these wacky accusations, is the procedure that we do some kind of mass email blast and send it out to everyone in the company and say, oh yeah, I think Johnny over here, I think he messed up on procedure 2. Is that, due process? Is that, the way we do conduct business here for everybody else? Can be very important. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. First study session, Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll be here on Saturday for the compensatory call-in, and Monday, Dr. Vanessa Grubbs, her new book, Hundreds of Interlaced Fingers, about organ transplants, racism, saving her own husband's life, and her recent visit to Seattle, Washington. Thanks everyone for tuning into the broadcast. I hope it was a constructive investment of your Thursday evening. Again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. If white people are giving you shot glasses as gifts, sobriety definitely sounds like a promising route to put them out of business. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people victims of white supremacy, we ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of Black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another Black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Even my conditioning has been conditioned.